Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this webinar on supports for local small micro food producers. My name is Sinead Phillips. I'm Assistant Secretary General in the Department of Agriculture, Food and the Marine. And I want to thank Board Bia for hosting this webinar this morning and to apologise for technical difficulties beyond our control, which resulted in the delay in starting. The aim of the webinar is to give an overview on some of the supports that are available to local food producers. It's not intended to be definitive because, as you'll hear throughout the morning, there are a wide range of supports. The webinar also gives an opportunity for a presentation of the key findings of a report recently commissioned by Board Bia on arrangements in other countries, with some insights on arrangements here in Ireland. If anyone has questions or comments through the seminar, please use the email address provided localfoodsupports@agriculture.gov.ie. I would now like to welcome Minister Pippa Hackett, Minister of State for Agriculture, for Land Use and Biodiversity at the Department of Agriculture, Food and the Marine, to give the opening address. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sinead. And look, it's great to be here, and I'm delighted to welcome you all here this morning to this webinar on supports for local, small and micro food businesses and producers. Unfortunately, I can't be with you in the Board Bia studios. I'm covering for Minister McNally, who sadly has been detained in Donegal this week after the tragedies of last week. At the outset, I would like to express my appreciation to Michael and the team at Board Bia for hosting this event in conjunction with my department. I also want to thank the agencies and authorities who have partnered with my department for this webinar, making time in their busy schedules to join us this morning to share information on the supports they provide for small food enterprises. This morning, we are joined by presenters from Teagasc, including the Options Programme and the Prepared Consumer Food Centre, presenters from Galway County Council who will tell us about the Bia Innovation Hub. And we will also hear from Cork City Council on their initiatives for local food enterprises. Also on the panel, we will have Enterprise Ireland and local enterprise offices who will talk about their supports for local enterprises. And you will also hear from speakers from my own department on horticulture and agri-tourism schemes. As referred to in our programme for government, this government is committed to supporting local, small and micro food businesses and producers. We want to help local food producers to promote their routes to market and to connect them with the consumer. Following discussions on this with my department, Board Bia commissioned a research report to examine how other countries have been successful in developing premium markets from family farm produce. The report also looked at the existing arrangements and supports here in Ireland, and I'm looking forward to hearing the findings from that report later this morning. This webinar is one of a number of initiatives that are currently underway to support the agri-food sector. Many of you will be aware that the government recently approved our CAP strategic plan for 2023 to 2027, which will deliver almost €10 billion over the next 5 years and will provide vital support to farmers and rural communities aiming to meet the twin objectives of ensuring the continued viability of family farms and maximising the environmental and social sustainability of the sector. This includes in particular the LEADER programme, which aims to support the economic and social development of rural communities by supporting a community-led local development approach to rural development and by providing the resources necessary for communities to support their own development and create capacity at local level. These resources and supports will be provided to local action groups to implement predefined local development strategies in their own local areas. The CAP strategic plan also foresees a 5-fold increase on the budget for organic farming. Recognition of organic produce as an environmentally friendly consumer option continues to grow, and I was recently delighted to attend for the first time in Ploughing Championship history a dedicated organic village, which showcased the thriving organic sector across a broad range of diverse exhibition stands, many of which are in fact small family producers. I also recently welcomed the publication of a report that I commissioned on opportunities in the Irish horticulture sector, which will lead to the development of an overarching strategy for the sector, which will ensure the growth and prosperity of this industry. Regarding the subject of today's webinar, my own understanding of the supports for sector is that there are a wide range of supports available for local food businesses, but that these are spread across a number of departments and agencies. And perhaps it's not entirely always clear or easily accessible to access these supports. So I am interested personally in understanding more about the distinctions made between the supports provided through various state bodies and how it can be ensured that these producers involved or those wishing to start a local food business know which support measure is best suited for their offering, or indeed if there are any gaps in the range of supports available. I'm also interested in hearing what has been learnt from the assessment of arrangements in other countries, particularly in the EU, from which we can learn so much. Events like today's webinar give state agencies the opportunity to come together to promote the services they provide. And it will give local small food producers and businesses that have plans to set up or diversify their own farm business the opportunity to hear about the supports available to them. We all know the challenges that faced us during the COVID-19 pandemic and how businesses were severely impacted. We also witnessed the resilience of the food chain and in particular the way in which food businesses, including local food offerings, pivoted to the new reality in which we found ourselves. My colleagues in government and I are very aware of the pressures from rising costs affecting us all, including those in food business, and we will continue to monitor that ongoing situation. I hope today's event will give attendees an insight into some of the supports available to help local small food production enterprise develop premium, sustainable markets closer to home and promote short, efficient routes to market. And it should also be of interest to farmers wishing to diversify their own off-farm enterprises. I'm going to hand over now to Michael Murphy, the interim CEO of Board Bia, who's going to introduce the first item. And I hope you all enjoy the morning, and look forward to catching up with you soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Hackett, for setting the context for the report that we're going to look into in great detail today. You're all very, very welcome to the Board Bia Global Hub, whether you're joining us physically or present here this morning. We're delighted to be working with the Department of Agriculture, Food and Marine in bringing this study to life. We all know that the family farm model is crucial, the lifeblood of our communities in Ireland. It's also the innovation and inspiration for the wider food and drink industry. And protecting and enhancing that family farm model is a key part of the programme for government, as the Minister mentioned. We in Board Bia were happy to facilitate the tender process for this report to explore both the existing and potential future supports for local small and micro food businesses in Ireland. And we're going to hear in a few minutes how that study is evaluating the supports here in Ireland, but also look to other countries throughout Europe in terms of the supports available. So without further ado, I'm going to ask Helen King and Claire Cogan from HK and Associates to take us through the detail of the report. Thank you.
Well, thank you and good morning, everyone. Over the next 45 minutes, I'd like to share with you the results of the study we conducted last autumn on supporting the development of family farm producers. I would like to start by introducing the study, the objectives, the research method, how we went about it. I'll then briefly take you through what we heard from farmers, what we heard from agencies in terms of family farm producers, their motivations, their mindset, and why they go into moving into other enterprises. Claire then will take you through some international practice, looking at France and the US and a little bit about the UK. And then we'll do a very, very brief overview of the public and private supports that are available in this country. Claire will spend a bit of time on what we heard in terms of what are the barriers to success for family farm producers. And then we'll probably spend, hopefully, the guts of our time going through the recommendations for improving the supports that are there. So it's important to say that the study findings are an external view of what's going on. the review was done not to critique or criticize, but to optimize what's available in a positive sense, to look what was available and help family farm producers to be more successful, and to help state agencies and all the characters within the system to optimize what they're offering. It's also important to highlight that what we're sharing with you this morning is very much a summary of the research. So there's a lot more detail. We are only touching on some of the routes to market, and there's a lot more detail there. So, and then finally, it's also important to say this was conducted last autumn. So we perhaps have missed things that have been introduced over the course of the last few months. Some things may have been established or commenced. So just to bear that in mind. So in terms of the introduction, the job to be done was to examine how other countries have been successful in developing premium markets for family farm produce. So in terms of the scope of the research, we looked at routes to market used by family farm producers, but out of scope was very much co-ops and processors. The job to be done was to learn from international best practice, to understand the supports available, those that were formal, informal, private, and public, and then really compare Ireland with best practice and ultimately analyze all that and come up with some recommendations. So our research partners are myself, Helen King, and my associate, Claire Cogan. In terms of the research, it was qualitative primary research, deep dive interviews across the country, across farm producers, state bodies, routes to market and others. And really we tried to get a cross section of all of the food sectors. It very specifically focused on the food sector. So we didn't touch on forestry or any other agricultural outlets. We also looked at France, the UK and the US. So family farm producers. Really want to talk a little bit about their motivations and their mindset, because this is really important in the context of what's happening with their support. It's also important in terms of the recommendations that we've come up with. So, and this is very much based on what the farmers and the farm families told us and what we heard from our other interviews. So first and foremost, family farm producers are farmers, and that's a really important point. They continue their farming practice when they're going to seek to do farm enterprise. They are motivated to start looking at enterprise primarily to support their farm income. They're looking to seek a better price for their produce. So very much needs-based. They look at their farm and they want to utilize their asset to the maximum. And they look at their family very often and they want to be able to sustain their farm for future generations. They see the challenges that are presented to them today, and they very much are thinking about the future and their family. The younger generation that are there, they see the challenges on farms today. They sometimes are not motivated to stay within the family farm, but often they want to do something different. They are looking at the farm from a different perspective. And also, they often seek out to be quite innovative and utilize the land in a different way, often in terms of sustainability, the environment, and so forth. But quality can also be a motivating factor for farm family producers. They believe farm produce is fresher and it's better, and they want to give that to the consumer, and they're quite proud of what they're producing. They want to deliver higher quality products that they perceive perhaps aren't available elsewhere. And in some cases, they see a niche, perhaps elderflower cordial or so. They think there's an opportunity in the market to do something different, and they want to seize the opportunity. And also through their engagement with state agencies, with Teagasc, their farm advisors, etc., they're presented with trends, they see policy changes, and they just say, well, there's an opportunity that we as a family farm would like to exploit. So very much in the first instance, motivated by supplementing farm income, but other motivations. In terms of their mindset, they are often, as they're farmers, but they're a team, husband, wife, and children often. They tend to be cautious in their mindset. They're entering into a business that often they don't know a lot about, and they're not always confident. So there is the fear of the unknown. They're farmers, and then they're looking to set up a business. And with all of that business enterprise comes a lot of things that they perhaps are not familiar with. So they need to see success. They need to see how other farm families have been successful. They need to hear about, what their experiences were. They often rely on word of mouth, talking to others, and they think first and foremost of what they're producing at the moment as a commodity. And often they don't think of adding value or moving from what they're actually doing on the farm at the moment. There is a strong community network, which is fantastic and often very positive, but that positivity also has a little bit of negativity in that the sphere and lens with which they are starting out on this enterprise is often quite narrow. And it's within that peer community, so they don't always see the wider business perspective. So I'll just hand you over now to Claire, who's going to briefly take you through international practice.
Thank you, Helen. So for this section, it's important to explain, first of all, that we focused specifically on farmers markets when we looked at international practice. We conducted interviews and desk research, and we focused on 3 markets in particular, France, the US, and the UK. And the reason we chose France was because of the well-ingrained and well-known food culture that France benefits from, and also the tradition long established of excellent farmers markets. And we chose the US and the UK as examples of markets where there's been a recent resurgence in development of farmers markets. So what I'm going to share with you is very much a summary of what we learned, because time doesn't allow us to go into too much detail. So in terms of France, I suppose there are 5 key points that arise. The first is, as we know, that France benefits from a food culture, and that does have an impact in terms of the support for farmers markets and for family farm produce generally. And food is an inherent part of French culture. It transcends socio-demographic groups. So what's interesting is, in a French context, it's not seen as the preserve of the better off to have access to high quality, locally produced foods. It is something that people right across the board have access to. It's available and accessible to all. And it begins at a very young age. Children in primary school are given a 2-hour lunch break, and they're encouraged to have a 3-course lunch. And so from that stage onwards, they develop an appreciation of food. The second point is there is this appreciation of the concept of terroir. So we talk about goût du terroir in French, and there isn't a direct translation into English of that, but it's essentially the characteristics of food that is produced in a certain place. And it includes everything from the impact of the soil, the climate, how it's farmed, how it's produced, that gives food produced in a particular place a very unique taste, unique texture, unique smell sometimes, and that is appreciated. So French consumers understand that locally produced food is not mass produced, and they accept everything that goes with that. The third point is one that came through from all 3 markets that we looked at, and that is that markets are very well regulated. So in a French context, markets are managed to a very high standard, and there is a distinction made within markets for locally produced family farm foods. So, for example, farmers need to apply and to register as a business before they have the right to participate in a farmer's market. They're asked at the very beginning whether they themselves produce the food that they're going to sell, as opposed to selling it on somebody else's behalf. And throughout the system then, locally family farm produced food is prioritized in 3 ways, essentially. Farm producers receive preferential rates in terms of space, preferential positions in terms of waiting lists. There are often waiting lists to be able to sell at farmers markets, and they're prioritized within the system. And that's clear both to producers and to consumers that visit those markets. So there is a distinction that's made between local family farm produced foods and food more generally. The fourth point is that there are cooperative initiatives, so where farmers at local level and often community volunteers come together and organise markets or sell their produce, always with the support of local councils. And then the last point is around government support. So there are tactical government supports that the French government, for example, have introduced. And one example of which we thought was quite interesting was an online platform which was developed in January 2020 by the Department of Agriculture in France in partnership with direct sellers of locally produced foods. And it's a website, it's called Frais et Local, and it has 8,000 farmers registered. And it offers essentially consumers a single point of entry where they can access and find family farm produce. They can search by category or by area. And it offers the farmers visibility that they otherwise would not benefit from. So all of these factors contribute to supporting and sustaining family farm producers in France. If we look at the US then, the US has over 8,000 farmers markets that play a critical role in connecting communities and producers and in strengthening the food system overall. They champion a competitive and a resilient food system. And again, there are a number of factors that contribute to this. I think the first three really are all about how farmers markets are structured and organised. They're structured in a very centralised way. There's a very strong community volunteerism spirit, and a lot of people at local level, volunteers at local level, become involved in farmers markets. And they're generally non-profit, and they depend very much on support from the local community. And they also have representative agencies that serve the purpose of supporting groups at a higher or a more regional level through training, through championing standards, through minimising red tape for farm producers. The other interesting point that came through, and this was specifically from the US, was that farmers markets often advocate for certain key principles. So they advocate, for example, for affordable access to local fresh food and for food security and for the well-being of people that work in the food and drink industry. So they champion diversity and inclusion within the food system, and they challenge and often dismantle racism, for example. So this was something that was very much associated with farmers markets in the US. And again, we see tactical government supports coming through where the Department of Agriculture in the US launch initiatives deliberately to promote and facilitate the sale of farm produce at a national and a regional level. And for example, they link government supports for low-income households directly into farmers markets, which supports farm producers, farmers markets, and also people on low incomes. So now I'm going to talk briefly about the public and private supports that are available to producers in Ireland. I suppose the first point is that there is a whole ecosystem of supports that farm producers need to have in order to sustain and support their businesses. And essentially, as Helen said earlier, farmers are very motivated. They're motivated to run their farms and to make their farms viable. That moment when they decide to set up a business, just like any other entrepreneur, there's a lot of supports that they will need in order to make that happen. And that includes the wider environment, availability of capital, access to training, so business skills, mentors that can help them, etc. So there are a wide range of needs that become relevant in that moment where they're deciding to set up a food business. Now, I want to just explain that this summary is very much based on qualitative research. It is based on interviews and desk research that Helen and I conducted. It is not meant to be a definitive 100% accurate picture of the supports that each of the state bodies provide. Rather, it's a summary, and particularly from the point of view of a family farm producer. So what it serves to do is to highlight, first of all, the range of state bodies that provide supports for family farm producers and the nature of the supports that are provided. Again, there's quite a variety. And there are some cases where similar supports are provided by different agencies, and there are other cases where certain agencies focus on a certain form of support. What it does really is it illustrates from the perspective of a family farm producer how many supports are out there and how it can be a challenge simply to navigate the system, where to start, what supports to access, how to make sure that you benefit from all of the supports that are available. And so you see we have summarised supports available from Teagasc, the local enterprise offices, the LEADER programme, Bord Bia, local authorities, and Údarás na Gaeltachta, SkillNet, and also Enterprise Ireland, where innovation vouchers play an important role. So it does summarise, as I say, the availability of supports and the challenge that it can be to navigate those supports. So now I'm going to talk briefly about barriers to success. Again, this came through from the interviews and the research that we did, and we're going to summarise barriers to success just in terms of certain key themes. Before we get into that, I think it's important to highlight that there is satisfaction with the level of support that is out there. The majority are positive about the support that they've received. They understand that there are supports that are available. Really, the job to be done is really optimizing the supports that are there, allocating supports in a particular way that would make them more impactful and more effective. So it is really about maximizing effectiveness as opposed to reinventing the wheel. In terms of barriers to success, there are some that are very much about, they're felt by the producers themselves. And there are three in particular that we want to mention. The first is business acumen. So obviously farmers know how to run farms, they know how to manage their farms, but once they make that move to set up a food business, it brings them into different territory where there is a need to be able to develop business plans. And often that can be a challenge in terms of developing a plan that's rigorous and specifically designed for a food business. There can be a lack of financial know-how. That's in relation to food businesses as opposed to farming or any other aspect. Marketing should really be integral at the very beginning, at the very earliest stage of setting up a business. However, it isn't always integral at that point. And some farm producers haven't registered as food businesses when they first approach state agencies for support, and that can get in the way of them accessing the supports that they might need. In terms of field of vision, very much because of the nature of what they do, farmers are immersed in the day-to-day, just managing and running a farm, as well as taking on the challenge of setting up a new business. So they don't always have the headspace that's needed to think about the medium to longer term and to think about how to run or plan the development of their business. They may not, as a result of that, always be prepared for what's ahead. Their short-term focus might be more significant than the longer-term view. And at the early stage, an ambition to scale up or to export may not be top of mind and may not be evident. They tend to be asset-rich but lack cash. Capital investment, which of course is necessary as you scale up a business, can be difficult to secure. They work very hard on the production and the farming side, and it can be very difficult to elevate above that day-to-day challenge and take a longer-term view of business development. So that is where they really need support. And these quotes illustrate the point. They need thinking time to come up with the plan. If you don't take that time, you don't essentially have a plan. And sometimes the range of skills that are involved and that are necessary can feel as if they're almost forced on farm producers when they don't have the bandwidth, the mental bandwidth to take them on. So all of these issues can be barriers to success in the early stages of setting up a new food business. And then there's how state supports are perceived. State supports are perceived at times as difficult to navigate. It's simply a question, first of all, of knowing where to start, where to go first, and how to understand what is available, which agencies should be approached, which are involved, and so on. And it's an awareness of that. At times, the myriad of state supports can seem maybe not too joined up or not too coherent from an outsider's perspective, and the roles and responsibilities of particular agencies may not be seen as totally clear. So there is, I suppose, there is a need for understanding where to start and how to navigate the system. There is an administrative burden in particular areas. So particularly when it comes to accessing funding, there's a lot of paperwork involved, and the process can come across to a farm producer as overly bureaucratic at times. Procurement as a process can be difficult, particularly for people that aren't accustomed to it. And often, sometimes, funding can be seen as, although attractive, simply not something that warrants the hassle of getting it. So that can be a challenge. And there is a sense that the administrative burden is actually getting larger over time. And then there's availability of expertise. So the agencies cover a lot of different sectors, a lot of different aspects of farming, and there may at times be a lack of specialist knowledge. Some of the areas that farm producers want to become more involved in are quite specialist, and it may be a challenge for them to access that level of specialist support. And the complexities of running a farm enterprise from the perspective of the support providers may not always be understood. Advisory teams seem to be under-resourced from the perspective of farm producers. There is such a demand for the support of advisory services that it can seem that the advisory services are very stretched, and that support can therefore be more difficult to access. In terms of market dynamics, I think we're all well aware of the fact that there are, for example, there's a shortage of labour that isn't just relevant for farm producers, but across the board. But it does impinge on farm producers, and that continues to be the case. The next 2 points are really around the availability of production facilities, whether it's co-manufacturing opportunities or whether it's the available of commercial kitchens and production units. And the point really is that demand outstrips supply. So in co-manufacturing, we've heard of cases where within Ireland, food manufacturers or food producers are finding it difficult to find co-manufacturing opportunities. And in terms of commercial kitchens and production units, there is a lot of demand. Now, there are some excellent initiatives. There are food hubs that are delivering for food businesses. There simply needs to be more support for such initiatives because there is such demand. Even when businesses manage to access production facilities through a food hub, for example, sometimes they may end up staying in that hub situation longer than planned, which can create bottlenecks, which also points to the need to support and to, if anything, expand production facilities. And then lastly, in terms of private sector funding, that can be a challenge for family farm producers. The challenge, I suppose, begins with having a strong business plan that can make the case for funding and convince funders. But it is important to understand that banks, for example, will need reassurance about the viability of a food business plan. And sometimes it can be difficult to demonstrate that viability in the very early stages. So there is, as we mentioned before, support needed for the development of business plans to help access that kind of funding. So essentially, if we look at all of these barriers to success, what we find is that there can be a vicious cycle, where on the one hand, we know that in an ideal world, family farm producers would take a longer term view, would build a very robust business plan, would take into account consumer understanding, market positioning, channel distribution, pricing, all of these things which are essential to making a business work. However, the pressure that they're under and the availability of resource means that they can essentially end up working very long hours, very hard hours, and they may not be able to rise above the day-to-day to see what's needed longer term. It can lead to a vicious cycle, and there definitely is a need for a longer term horizon, and that's where support really is needed. So now I'm going to hand you back to Helen, who's going to take you through the recommendations.
Okay, so we haven't covered everything so far, but really what we have seen is there are a myriad of supports available to family farm producers. And really, the question is not what's available, it's just the effectiveness can perhaps be limited or perceived to be limited by 4 core factors. The first factor is that the full range of available supports is not always visible to the farmers and their families. And sometimes even we heard through our interviews that the providers are not aware of everything that's available. The second barrier perhaps is that the perception is that there is no clear starting point. So Claire touched on this, but with no clear starting point, the producers don't know how they can inform themselves and gain access to everything that's available there. Supports are not always optimized for family farm producers. So there are loads of start your own business courses, but there are very few dedicated supports that specifically tap into the mindset and the motivations of family farm producers and their needs. So there is the UCC speciality food production course, which is supported by the Department of Agriculture, very highly spoken of, and very specifically does target family farm producers. And then the fourth issue is that some supports are not easy to access. And we spoke about the bureaucracy. The funding application processes can be onerous. We've heard of 26 pages to complete and loads of detail required. So that access and lack of ease of access, including the supply or the demand outstripping the supply for the food hubs and the production units, certainly affects the effectiveness of the supports that are there. So we have come up with the 4 C's recommendations to guide success for family farm producers and optimize the state engagement with them. So that's clarify, collaborate, look at the food culture within Ireland, and then communicate. So this quote aptly sums up the need to clarify what's available. We heard this, that accessing information and support was so hard, I can easily see why people give up. So really it is necessary to clarify the role of state bodies. We know that family farms are the cornerstone of community and rural life, and they need supports to become sustainable economically, environmentally, and socially. So to clarify the role of each state body in supporting them, the type of support that's provided, the eligibility requirements, and the demarcation lines. When do I move from a LEO to a leader? When do I move from a Teagasc, etc.? So just to understand the type of support and how they really journey through the support. It's important to clarify which state body is responsible for areas where today there is a sense of overlap or indeed a perceived gap for family farms. So who is the first port of call for farmers planning to set up a produce enterprise? Where can they access information and advice? And who is going to direct them through that journey to find appropriate supports? Where will they get marketing information? So, Board Bia is currently working with them if they have a turnover of 100K or more. Often when they're starting out, that's not possible. So where should they access marketing advice and support? And I think we saw when we looked at the supports, several agencies and support systems will say that they offer marketing advice and support. And then often, if their first route to market is a farmer's market, how do they manage that system? How do they understand the standards required? How do they understand the rules of engagement and so forth? So very much clarifying a number of areas of how they can access support. It is also about simplifying language and process. So this is quite a big job to be done in terms of making it very easy to understand and very easy to access. So, I mentioned the comprehensive application process, the procurement process. In some state supports, farmers have to engage in a procurement process themselves. They often want to work with local suppliers, and they just find the entire process quite onerous and difficult to navigate. And also they see the gaps between what grant support different bodies can provide is quite frustrating. So depending on who they go to, may in some cases lead to different grant supports. So streamline funding to reduce paperwork, simplify the application processes, perhaps look at the procurement process, and instead of procurement tenders being required for over 5,000, maybe look at that it's for a much larger number, perhaps 50,000 euro funding, and support local suppliers while at the same time ensuring transparency throughout that procurement process. The second recommendation is collaboration. So just read out this quote. We need to take a whole farm approach. Advice needs to be grounded in whole farm planning, looking at the assets they have, family involvement, looking at forestry, looking at other agri systems and food as well. So all about making their farm more economically viable, and there could be several different aspects to it. So multi-agency collaboration with one clear starting point is our core recommendation. So we need to ensure all agencies are working together. There's joined up thinking. We believe it's imperative that one point of contact is nominated as the first port of call, that family farms know who to contact, and that individual agency will then be able to share all of the information and help them navigate the system and signpost farmers to appropriate supports. We think it's important to optimize current programs for food businesses. So I know we have Barry speaking about the options program, but this is just an example. So support farm diversification across a broad range of areas, including food produce. We know the options programs looks beyond food, but it's really important to make sure that all of the supports have specific knowledge within food, and in high demand with a recent increase in queries. We also believe that this program needs to see a bit more support behind it. So in terms of, well, that was an example of options, but across all supports, we believe that dedicated full-time resources are required for this audience, that the support is appreciated and it's very positive, but there's a perceived sense of not enough dedicated full-time resources to lead it. Claire touched on a development of food business specialism. So individuals that can work in very specialist areas, have a depth of expertise rather than breadth, and facilitate tailored training, networking with relevant bodies, and targeted work plans, and ensure business plans are developed with rigor from the very start. Without the rigorous business plan, it's quite difficult to succeed. And then we know a number of the programs are based regionally rather than by specialist, and we believe to optimize supports, there should be it should be based on specialism rather than geography, and allow expert advice to be provided from anywhere in the country to anywhere in the country, in line with current trend towards more remote support. So rather than having you contact your Midlands or your South, you contact the person that is very specifically on your agenda. We did an awful lot of discussion around food hubs and producer groups, and we have recommendations that collaboration should be strengthened by food producer groups, and continued support for the development of regional food producer groups. We thought the activity that they're undertaking at the moment, the support they're giving is fantastic, and they play a critical role in that support. They allow access to networking, they access to premium routes to market, and attracting tourism. And really the main point about this is that there should be producer groups across the country that are supported with individuals and full-time positions to help them, because there is a strong admin there. We also believe that the innovation hubs that are there, the few that are there, are excellent, and we believe enhanced support for regional innovation hubs should be provided. So hubs offer innovation and incubation support in one place. Large ones cover technical and food business support, and link education, training events, and food tourism. And I know you're going to hear more about that later. They provide the necessary space, often that's required for the farmers when they're going into production. They allow business expansion. And we do know that there are some regional disparities, but we do believe the system of innovation hubs is a strong one and should be supported further. The next piece is culture, and Claire is going to take you through this piece.
So in terms of culture, we mentioned earlier that that was one of the standout factors that we observed in a French context, and there's opportunity to launch some initiatives, we believe, in Ireland in this space. I think one quote that we found interesting in our interviews from somebody in Ireland was the fact that if you take a long-term view, producers have actually gone on a journey. If you think about how the food industry has developed, family farm producers have really raised the standards and the levels of food production in Ireland. So now what we have, it's unbelievable. Irish produce is great. They've really added value. Producers have made the journey. It's not always the case in this person's view that consumers have made the same journey, and that's where food culture becomes relevant. So this is all about enhancing food appreciation among consumers, and it's relevant because that's where you generate demand for family farm produce. Support initiatives that we thought were really interesting, and these exist but could be scaled up or expanded, for example, are in the area of education. So we call out some examples that we thought were very impressive. At primary and secondary level, Airfield Market in Dublin here run a number of initiatives. One, for example, is connecting school children at primary level with farmers through technology. So there are little time slots, 15 minutes a piece, and the children learn what's happening on a particular farm. And it just brings the farm into the classroom, and it's a very good way to educate children about food and food production and so on. At secondary level, Airfield are running a 6-week programme that can be offered as part of the transition year curriculum. And again, it's called From the Ground Up, and it's teaching children at that stage about food production and farm food production. They also work with the local Dept school in terms of encouraging cooking skills and teaching children about production of food. At third level then, Helen mentioned the course at UCC, which is very much admired and actually envied by other countries. So that is an excellent course, and something that again could be expanded upon or scaled up, if you like. And there's also an opportunity simply to showcase family farm produce on third level campuses, where you've got the food industry, people of tomorrow, retailers of tomorrow, business leaders of tomorrow on these campuses. So why not showcase family farm produce to these people? So that's in the area of education. We then look at enhancing food appreciation among the general public, and there are two aspects to this. One is, I suppose, educating consumers on the features and benefits of family farm produce. And this goes back to that goût de terroir that we mentioned in a French context. So letting people know about the unique qualities of food that is produced on local farms, be that the unique taste, health benefits, sustainability benefits, the short supply chain, environmental benefits, all of these things come together at family farm produce level. And there's also another aspect to this, which is explaining the terminology, maybe not in enormous detail, but at least giving people a sense of what some of these terms mean, be it farmhouse or artisan or artisanal or natural. So at a producer level, we hold producers to very high standards in that aspect. It's something that it's a quality standard that they have to achieve, and we're very careful to make sure that they tick all of the boxes before they can use those terms. However, at the other end of the spectrum, consumers don't always understand them, and It would benefit the industry as a whole if consumers did, because it would give a rationale for premium and for essentially choosing these products over alternatives. And there is also an opportunity just to essentially communicate and support the development of farmers markets. 3 aspects to this: supporting existing farmers markets, the ones that authentically feature family farm produce, and even where markets are mixed and where they supply family farm produce but other forms of food and other products as well, featuring, calling out, if you like, to consumers family farm produce, so that they're able to differentiate between family farm produce and other products. They're supporting the regeneration of markets in urban areas. So we have a best class example in the English market in Cork, for example, and we need more of that, and we need a lot of that, for example, in Dublin. And I know there are plans to develop the Victorian market in Smithfield, but within that, making sure that family farm producers are prioritised and are featured would deliver enormous benefits. It would essentially create awareness among both urban dwellers and tourists, and it's an opportunity to showcase family farm producers. And then there's the management of farmers markets, and we did allude to that. In other markets, we see a very well-regulated, well-managed, well-controlled approach to managing farmers markets, and we need to develop that in Ireland too. I'm now going to hand back to Helen, who'll take you through the communicate point.
So our final recommendation is all about communication, and this quote probably amplifies everything we've said already, that it's very challenging to navigate the state system. It's a minefield, and I work in it. So communication is quite important. So our recommendation is to communicate to both farmers and to consumers. Our first recommendation is to create a platform for farm enterprises to access public and private supports. And this would be through a dedicated website that they can access that has all the information, has the journey plans from ideation to scale up. In conjunction with that, the same platform can be used for consumers. And that's, Claire mentioned the French example. So it would enable consumers to see where their family farm producers are from in their local area, where they can buy their produce, and give them a single entry point to find the produce from their local farmers. We believe that we should encourage the creation of a national annual event. This is something that we have seen in the US market and in France, again, aimed at consumers to encourage farm diversification and really inspire them, look at all the different options that they have that they can maximize their success and the potential of income off of their farm. We believe it will be important to foster a community spirit. What we heard from the US market was incredibly strong. The farmers markets were underpinned from community involvement through neighborhoods, and really promoted the farmers markets to the local community. And we believe creating a program of nationwide farmers markets events, perhaps an annual week throughout the year, highlighting everything that's available, would give visibility and certainly help both from a producer's and a consumer's perspectives. And then in terms of communicating to farmers and consumers, creating an above the line campaign to communicate all the resources available. So they hear about it in the campaign, they know where to go, they know who the single point of entry is, and it's encouraging them to innovate. It's encouraging to them to look broader and to get engaged with their state supports. So quite a number of recommendations in there. We've just prioritized our 3 core recommendations. Some of the recommendations we've just gone through are shorter term, more urgent, some perhaps for the longer term. Our 3 priority recommendations are, first and foremost, clarity around roles and responsibilities and where to go. Secondly, nominating that one point of contact. So if that individual or agency is nominated, they know where to direct farmers. It really would take away an awful lot of the ambiguity. We do believe that it would be important to establish a forum with state agency representation that's dedicated to looking at family farm producers, to encourage support, to encourage collaboration, and to make sure the journey for that farm producer is smooth. And then our third priority area recommendation is creating that platform for farm enterprises to access public and private supports through that dedicated website, and to launch and then to communicate that website. And then finally, when we map out the recommendations and we prioritize them, we're looking at it in terms of importance and urgency. And the three I've highlighted are obviously, we believe, are more important and more urgent, and those three should be addressed immediately. And some of the others are a little bit longer term, but certainly would help. All of these recommendations, we believe, will help to enable the success of family farm producers from today. So thank you.
Thank you very much to Helen King and Claire Cogan for that really insightful research and for the clarity of their proposed actions. I think we are lucky that we have here today a lot of the actors involved in delivering those state agency supports, and hopefully this event itself will help us to get clarity on the different roles involved. So I'm very pleased now to welcome Barry Caslin from Teagasc, who's going to tell us about the Teagasc Options programme for farm families, and that will include some insights into the key considerations that go into making a decision about farm diversification.
Thanks, Sinead, and good morning, everyone, and good morning to everyone online as well. So yeah, I'm going to give you an idea. So Barry Caslin is my name, Energy and Rural Development Specialist with Teagasc. So I'm based out of the Longford office, but could be anywhere in the country, covering mainly renewable energy, but also rural development is a key area of my work as well. But I'm going to give you an idea about the Teagasc Farm Business Options programme, what we do, what our advisors do in that programme. And also, I suppose, some of the barriers that we're seeing, some of the challenges that we're seeing in farmers, I suppose, getting involved in diversifying into new businesses, not just in food, but in other businesses as well. So I suppose the Teagasc Options programme is all about diversification and innovation. We produce different booklets. We have a lot of information on our website, and that's the website underneath there, Rural Economy, Rural Development, or ruraldev.ie. Produce different publications, such as the one here in Rural Tourism. There'd be various fact sheets on the website as well, which would include food as well. We do a lot of work with our Food Industrial Development Department from Ashtown, get fact sheets up on the website that gives people an idea, if they are engaging in a new food business, what they need to be looking at. So the main idea of the Farm Business Options programme is to give individuals a better understanding of how to turn an idea into a viable business. To provide a mentor for individuals on their area and assist in the completion of a business plan, and to introduce individuals and other agencies or parties who may be able to offer assistance with a specific project. Because, as was mentioned in the report earlier on, which was excellent, there are a lot of agencies out there, and it can be confusing for people as regards who they should be speaking to. And we try and be a conduit there between ourselves and the likes of the LEO, the Educational Training Boards, who I think have a major role to play in all of this as well. They offer a lot of courses around the country, and we try and link farmers up with the local LEOs as well, and leader companies. So the target audience is mainly farmers who are considering to improve their farm incomes. It may be, very often we get calls from maybe the farmer themselves, their wife, their children, who are looking to do something different with their farm. It could be adding value to the milk, maybe selling directly from a vending machine on the farm. It may be producing cheese on the farm. And there are some courses in those areas that are offered within Teagasc. For example, down in Moore Park, where there are cheese making courses, there could be chocolate making courses. They could be provided if there was a particular demand for those type of courses to be delivered. The types of areas that we cover under the options, so it's a multitude of different areas that's covered. So assessing your enterprise, developing your idea, food enterprise possibilities, energy, crops could be covered. We generally try and get feedback from people. What are they looking for in a course? Because you're tailor making a course around the country in the different Teagasc regions, and we have 12 different Teagasc regions. It can be difficult to gauge what do people want to learn about on a course. Is it food? Is it tourism? Is it snail farming? Is it lamb farming? Is it some other enterprise that they're trying to learn about and developing a business around? So we've developed a portal to try and segregate all that information, try and divide people into different groups and have a fair idea when we are developing a group in a particular region. We know what their particular want or need is, and we try and build a course around that. So we cover areas like forestry, renewable energy, organic opportunities, rural tourism, marketing and direct selling. So again, this would be engaging with the likes of the local enterprise offices, getting speakers and mentors in there to speak at these courses and bringing in that expertise to the farmers. Applying for grant aid, we would also get the leader companies in at those courses to speak about the leader in that region, because leader programs in different regions prioritize different things as well. Family farm finance, business support, succession. So we would have internal Teagasc speakers as well who can deliver a lot of this, especially in the area of forestry and energy and organic farming. And then if we don't have the expertise in-house, we outsource that from other agencies. So the method of delivery is a series of workshops that we deliver over a wide range of topics, as mentioned there. This is the portal that we use, opt-in.ie, or farmers can contact their local Teagasc office directly and put in an expression of interest, ask that if there's, whenever the next options course has been ran in their area, that they're contacted directly about it. Guest farmers who have successfully diversified will speak at each workshop. We find that's very, very good when people hear champions who've already diversified speaking. It gives them a bit of confidence that they know somebody else, what they've done and what challenges they've faced along the way. Teagasc specialists are also in attendance, and what we try and also integrate into it is a farm visit. So if there was a particular interest in food, if there was a particular interest in tourism, we try and visit those type of farms on the last day of the workshops. The main local agencies that we try and integrate into these type of courses will be the local enterprise office. I think they're key in this because they're doing a lot of very good work in working with businesses in the area, and I think we can be a good conduit to the local enterprise office network around the country. The local development companies such as the leader companies, I think ETBs are very important here as well, because they run an awful lot of courses which many people are not aware of in their local area. They will tailor make courses as well if there's a particular need or demand. It could be HACCP type training courses, different types of food training courses that can be offered on a local basis. The intro, we found a great interest in that, to explain about pensions and if you're employing staff, I suppose the challenges and things that you have to do if you are setting up a new business, to make staff aware of it as well. The Teagasc Food Development Department, we would integrate them into the Teagasc Options program. We have a limited number of people that can do that, and trying to cover the country can be difficult there as well, but we try and incorporate them as well. The Bia Innovator campus, we ran a recent pilot, and we had Elaine, who's speaking here today, and Colin speaking at those kind of courses as well. And citizens information, a lot of information that's out there within citizens information, which people don't tap into as well. So if you are setting up a new business and you are looking for, it could be employment law, I think that's where the likes of citizens information can be very, very important. So we ran a pilot, as I just mentioned in the previous slide there, and we did it this year. And because I come from Roscommon myself, I decided to work with the local enterprise office in County Roscommon. And it was really to have better integration and more formalized approach towards working with the LEO in Roscommon and nationally as well. And we did it as a pilot there just to see, how it would work. In the past, most of our workshops would have been a large group. It was nearly fill a room with people, and you didn't know where you tap into the right people or not. But the LEO's approach towards the likes of their start your own business courses, to have maybe a smaller group, maybe 15, less than 20 people certainly, and you have it more on a one-to-one basis, and that the people get to know each other in the group very, very well, and but that by the end of the 6 nights of the workshops, that they're sharing a lot more information with each other. and that they're learning from each other and networking with each other as well during the breaks. And I think that works well from an LEO aspect as well. So we did 6 evenings or workshops. It was just coming out of, it was earlier this year, around April, coming out of COVID. We weren't too sure were we able to hold them in person or not. A lot of the people who were going to attend them weren't too sure were they able to go back into an in-person meeting or not. But it was kind of April straddling into May was the time of the year that we ran it this year. I think it worked very well. The people that were at it, we had 11 people that attended the course. There was over 15 registered. We only wanted to have 15 at it anyways. Of the 11 people that were there, they came every night, and they all found great benefit to being there as well. So I think the LEO mentorship support is very, very valuable in this as well, because very often in our traditional options courses that we ran, where we didn't have the full LEO integration, you know, it was like they fell off the carousel at the end of that period. We couldn't hold their hand any longer. So by integrating the LEO into it, I think, you know, they have great mentors on, it could be social media, marketing, business planning, finance. So by being able to tap into that resource and be that conduit, I think that has worked very, very well. So I suppose the key questions that people are asking is, you know, that we would ask is, how productive is the core farming business? Because we don't want to see a situation where people go into drain their core farming business and don't reinvest in that and are focusing too much on the diversification. Can they differentiate what they sell to capture new markets? Could they be selling what they produce directly to consumers, especially if they process themselves? What business opportunities are there from greater public engagement? How can digital technology benefit your farm to diversify? These would be the kind of questions we'd be putting to people on these courses. What are the unique advantages and challenges on your farm, or the unique selling points that they may have? A lot of it could be skills that they may have as well, or they may need to upskill in a particular area to bring the business along. I think that research is critical to diversification as well. To prevent a new business being muscled out by an existing business. I know the leader is very conscious of this when they're funding in a local area, that they don't want to, they will look and see, is there another business doing something similar, and that they don't want to fund something that's going to outmuscle another business as well. Search out, and this is doing the research and development when you're doing your business plan as well. Search out similar businesses in other parts of Europe or further afield. I think it's important, you know, sometimes there's a lot of information out there already, and it might be doing a website search, it might be visiting another country, you know, whether it's food, whether it's tourism, and learning what are they doing, how are they selling directly, what's their online system like, what's their, you know, their marketing approach, how are they engaging with the consumer, what's my, you know, view of their website or my interaction with their website in terms of usefulness and usability. Need to exploit narrow niche within an existing market. For example, maybe wedding venues is one example that people have expressed a lot of interest in the courses. Major interest in leisure, health and well-being has resulted in examples of glamping, accommodation, major interest in that whole area in the diversification courses as well. Why do farmers diversify? It's not for everybody to diversify. It's a leap of faith. Some people don't like to make that leap of faith. So a very small percentage of farmers do diversify, but it is to earn an extra income. It could be the difference between a son or a daughter emigrating or maybe staying at home. Providing business opportunity for the partner, the family member, the future-proof the farm for future generations. Utilize redundant farm buildings or unproductive land. Because there is space. This is the good thing within rural areas, that we do have the space, and very often that space could be, it might be a small space that's required to develop maybe a food business or a tourism business, whatever it may be. Provide income for the short term, and maybe planning to wind down and looking at some other enterprises, kind of that would be less labor intensive. The different types of diversification will be contracting, commercial letting, holiday accommodation and events, retail and catering, renewables, dairy produce, and agri-food. I think it's very important as well. What we've noticed is the importance of women and diversification. Rural women are often underemployed, and women are very strong in areas such as hospitality and people skills. They're good at working in partnerships. They thrive on the challenge of food and the whole area of tourism as well. And in some cases, rural women have married into a farm, so bringing in new skills into a rural area that weren't there before. So I think, it's an area that has been very often undervalued. The key considerations in farm diversification are what are the interests and skills in a rural area. I think skills are very important. You often see tradition breeds tradition in areas that even within mainstream agriculture, you see dairy in some particular areas. You see pig and poultry in the Cavan Monaghan areas, for example. And it's the same, you know, with people diversifying into tourism. People look at what their neighbours are doing, and that tends to have a domino effect as well. What supports are available? What are the types of diversification enterprises suited to your area? What level of investment and education is required? Language, marketing may be required as well. And what's the labour availability in rural areas? Very often this area is undervalued, is labour and the cost of it. Even on-farm labour can be very, very difficult at the moment for milking, for dairy farms as well. So trying to get labour can be tricky, and something that some people don't consider when they're doing their business plan. Can be very, very hands-on. It can be all the families have to be putting the shoulder to the wheel in these diversifications. So it can be something that could be an undersight. Typical mistakes, what we find is that, you know, access into finance and bridging loans, you know, because people can have skills in particular areas, but they mightn't be good on the financial side, they mightn't be good on the marketing side, but they might be good at producing their product. So it's about realizing that they don't have those skills, maybe enhancing those skills, maybe doing a local course with the ETB. Sometimes not getting the key decision makers involved. That could be the likes of maybe family members having a family meeting. It could be the bank manager. It could be the planner in the county council. You know, that you're getting those key people involved. That you have your pre-planning meetings. All of that to explain what you're trying to do with this particular project. Not investing enough effort in research. So important. Not taking time to examine budgetary or financial issues. And ensuring that diversification projects fit in with the core farming within the region or within the farm itself. So very often, you know, if a diversification could complement what's going on in the farm, it could be the son or a daughter could be an extra pair of hands at certain times of the year to give for relief milking or, you know, for other jobs that are going on the farm. It's that those extra pair of hands, but you can divide out the work a bit better throughout the year by having an extra body there. But there's another business to keep it going. Was the training supports required, the ability to shop around and finance deals, training that helps project developers to scrutinise terms and conditions is necessary. Making realistic cash flow projections is key, training that's required. Investigating and funding or grant opportunities, specifying identical requirements and quotes, because very often if you are getting leader funding, for example, you do need to get 3 quotes, and that can be tricky for people. Ensuring cash flow to account for the grant period, grant paid in arrears, because very often you have to get a bridging loan in advance before you get your grant. So you have to make that expenditure before you receive the grant. I won't go down through this all, but there's the whole area of insurance and risk management is so important in diversifications. Is putting food products onto the market, which people mightn't be aware of. It mightn't meet the market requirement. There mightn't be the right HACCP standards adhered to, and if there's any issues with bacterial contamination or anything like that, this is where, you know, there needs to be the proper education and the proper insurance in place as well, because there could be a lot of money at stake here as well. Tax and financials areas such as capital gains tax, because you are setting up a new business and it can be daunting for people to understand all of this, but it's another area that we think that they need to enhance their skills on. Inheritance tax, you know, if you change over a part of the farm to a new business, you know, whether it's, you know, will agricultural relief be lost on that area of ground, depending on what the diversification is. So it's that kind of stuff. And the tax treatment of pensions and investments depends on individual circumstances and may change in the future as well. So that can be a moving feast. So just to conclude, the best projects complement the existing farm enterprise. A good project will remove the volatility that exists in the current farming business as well. There's no substitute for forward planning and looking at every aspect of the business. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Barry, for those real practical insights into how Teagasc can provide advisory supports for farmers. And I suppose the daunting range of issues that farm families have to consider before they take this step. So our next speaker is Shay Hannon, who's the National Manager of the Prepared Consumer Food Centre, which is based in Teagasc in Ashtown. The Prepared Consumer Food sector traditionally has had low levels of research, development and innovation. And obviously it was a sector that was particularly exposed to the impacts of Brexit. To help address those challenges, the Prepared Consumer Food Centre was established in 2018 by the Department of Agriculture, Food and the Marine in consultation with Teagasc, Food Drink Ireland's Prepared Consumer Food Company members, Enterprise Ireland and Bord Bia, to support research, development and innovation in this sector. The funding provided by my department was used for the purchase of specialist and bespoke equipment, and Shay will now tell us about the ongoing work of the centre.
Good morning, everyone, and indeed thanks very much to Bord Bia and the Department of Agriculture, Food and Marine for hosting this very informative event. Just to introduce myself, my name is Shay Hannon and I manage the National Prepared Consumer Food Centre based at Teagasc Ashtown facility. Again, just to give a little bit of a background to the facility, and again, as it's been mentioned, this sector, the prepared consumer food sector, was largely underfunded up until 2017, 2018. The funding provided by the department has really been for equipment, which has allowed us to invest in practically a vast range of equipment, which I'll talk to now in a few moments, to support not just the prepared consumer food sector, but the wider food sector in Ireland. And again, this is a national food centre which companies and small companies can approach us directly and utilise for the development of food products and indeed a wider research programme. So since we've set up the centre in 2018, we've worked with a number of small enterprises. I think we've worked with over 200 companies indeed since 2018, of which 40% of these have indeed been small enterprises. How this has worked, again, it's very simple to engage with our service. It comes quite simply through a phone call or through an email directly to me or to one of our other technologists or people who work within our department. So it's quite easy to get projects up and running and get a new product development project up and running. Again, the facility itself is a state-of-the-art process facility, which we split into a number of different sections, which I'll talk you through in a few moments. And also we work extremely closely with honour support groups in Ireland, indeed Enterprise Ireland, IBEC and Bord Bia. And a lot of our work also is supported through funding through Science Foundation Ireland and indeed firm measure through the department. So the centre itself is really split into 5 key pillars. And indeed, these 5 pillars are, I suppose, what's involved in any product development journey or when developing a food product, which is nutrition analysis and quality. Again, where I work primarily is within food product development and innovation. Again, an exciting wing to what we do within the centre is advanced processing technology. And really what that is looking forward to the next, I suppose, breakthrough in terms of technology or processing, I suppose, advancements in equipment which can be utilised within the Irish food industry. We also have a wing of our business set up for sensory analysis and quality. And again, this is often a forgotten science really in terms of the product development journey, and which is extremely important. And also really the key pillar, which is food safety and shelf life. And again, we do a lot of work with small clients in terms of understanding really what is required from a food safety perspective, and also what do they need to gain a safe, solid shelf life. So the centre itself, really, it's a circular journey in terms of innovation. Obviously, we have provided, and we're quite lucky with the investment that's been made through the department in terms of facilities and equipment, which can be utilised by any company, really. It's also a large part of the work we do is knowledge transfer. And indeed, that's working with our team in terms of training and advisory. Again, a company, and indeed, I often encourage this for a small enterprise to simply pick up the phone and call either me or one of my colleagues. Again, a 10-minute conversation can really cut through, I guess, a lot of, I suppose, the cloud in terms of what companies need to start up a food business. And again, I suppose a large part of what we do within the wider food research program is research and innovation. And again, it's tying this all together under the one roof in terms of the Prepared Consumer Food Centre. So again, it's just to clarify really that the work we do within the Prepared Consumer Food Centre, we are the science behind the food industry in Ireland, and it's key to put that forward. And again, it's been mentioned this morning of how the different state agencies interact, but that's key to mention. We are the science, and it's the hands-on approach we take to developing food products within the centre. And again, it's quite easy. The first step I would also is engage. Again, there's a lot of information on our website, and it's quite easy for a company or small enterprise to simply pick up the phone or send either myself or one of my colleagues an email and really get the journey underway. We also work quite closely with Enterprise Ireland, as I've mentioned, and it's been mentioned this morning already in terms of innovation vouchers and local enterprise support. And again, a number of our clients do avail of these types of supports. I think over 50% of the products, or of the projects, I should say, which we work on have a degree of funding, either through Enterprise Ireland or a local enterprise board. It is a lot of the work we do, again, it's key confidentiality, because again, we do work with very similar, I suppose, industries and enterprises. So a key part of a lot of work we do is developing a project, designing a contract, and then keeping confidentiality at the core of every project we run. So just to talk you through the centre itself, so again, the day-to-day, I suppose, work we do within the centre can start in our kitchen, our product development kitchen, which is a dedicated facility for small companies to come in and work either alongside me or one of our technologists. And this really is the pots and pans and hands-on product development journey where it really starts. Again, a lot of work I do in particular is taking companies from this level, from the 1 kilo, 2 kilo level within the kitchen to the larger scale, and actually developing a food business, moving up to 50, 100 kilos. And really that is a journey in itself of how a company can do that and how they can progress then into a co-manufacturer or indeed build their own business from this. Again, just give you a brief snapshot of some of the equipment we have within our main processing hall, and indeed we have 5 processing halls within the facility. So we have access to extrusion technology, and again, this can be used to produce a range of snacks, breakfast cereals, and also protein snacks as well, which we're doing a lot of work on at the moment. We also have an air drying system, and again, this particular system has been utilised by a lot of farmers in the last year in drying crops, and there's a lot of research being done in this space. And again, the centre itself just offers access really to an array of processing, mixing equipment, and indeed packaging equipment as well. We have a dedicated bakery development suite, and again, this can be used by a number of startups, or we work quite closely with the bakery industry in terms of analysis on flours and, I suppose, developing healthier formulations within the bakery industry. But again, this is where, I suppose, startup enterprise can come in, work with one of our technologists and really develop a range of baked products in a dedicated specialized space. Our meat development unit, and it's important to note that we have a dedicated meat industry development unit, or MIDU, which we call it for short. And this facility, essentially, we can take an animal, slaughter right through to a cook facility. And it's a very unique facility in Europe, indeed. I think there's only one facility of this kind available within Europe. So essentially, we can do a lot of work with raw meat. It is primarily used for research, but we've also used it extensively for developing, I suppose, valid alu meat products. And indeed, we have a number of projects running at the moment, particularly in dry aged meats. So trying to create, I suppose, an alternative to Parma or Serrano ham, which can be done within this facility. And again, this facility does add access to a range of analytical and packaging support as well. Again, I suppose this is the advanced processing technology, which is the exciting part of a lot of the work we do. And this really is looking at the next step in terms of food processing. So I give a brief example of this, which is high pressure processing. There's a facility actually set up in Dublin at the moment near the airport, which actually is a tolling facility for high pressure processing, sterilization really of bottles. You might see this at the moment for juices in particular. And really why this is done is to extend shelf life, which is extremely important in any food product that's developed. And again, I've just listed a range of the types of technology we have, such as pulsed electric field technology. And this, I suppose, piece of equipment has been adapted by McCain's, for example, in New Zealand. Now, what it is essentially is a product is subjected to an instantaneous pulse of electricity. And you might ask, why would you do that? Well, it's really 2 factors. One is sterilization, and the other is extraction. So if we need to extract polyphenol or a protein from a particular food product, this is how we can do this. And again, the big win for us in Teagasc will be to see this technology and adapted by an Irish food producer. And we can see that is going to happen very soon. Again, I suppose key or core to any of the work we do within the centre is food safety. And that's really, I suppose, where a lot of our startup clients struggle is to understand really the legislation, what's involved from a food safety perspective. And we have a dedicated food safety team who work quite closely with our product development team. And again, a lot of the conversations are around shelf life. So how do we achieve a safe shelf life? And again, what do we need to get tested from a microbiological point of view when developing a food product, which is key to a lot of work we do. And again, we do a lot of work at the moment in reformulation, so reduce salt and reduce sugar. And obviously this can have an impact on shelf life. So this area is really key to a lot of product development work we do. Our sensory science suite, and again, as I mentioned, this can sometimes be seen as a forgotten science. And it's really at the end of the process, which a lot of companies only consider sensory science. And within the facility, we do offer 18 dedicated booths, which companies can use and work alongside our researchers to really delve into what their product is and from a sensory attribute level. And this is done hand in hand, of course, with food safety. So by the time a company eventually does leave our facility, when they develop the product, they have a full scale of analysis from microbiological, nutritional, and right through to sensory as well. And again, we've adapted some novel technology within this laboratory as well, such as galvanic skin response, which companies can avail of to really get in-depth knowledge in terms of how consumers perceive their products. So just to talk you through briefly a case study of how a small enterprise, how a small farmer engaged with us in the last 2 years. So it was, I was approached directly by a farmer who wanted to take their own fresh cream, their own product, and develop that into something that's a premium product really, and market, I suppose, at local level with the, I suppose, option then of progressing onto a national scale. So again, we engaged with the client as we would for all our projects, and we developed a project brief and signed our service level agreement. This particular project was actually funded through Enterprise Ireland Innovation Voucher Scheme, which is €5,000 grant, which was quite easily processed. And again, this project, in terms of timelines, got up and running within 6 weeks from initial meeting. So how we did this, so we took the raw materials, and one of our technologists, and indeed myself, worked with the client in developing really kitchen scale samples, chocolate mousse, various different recipes, texture profiles and flavors. So this really all started within our product development kitchen, and again, utilizing the equipment we have within the kitchen. We then carried out some initial sensory analysis, and indeed this employed a wider team to see really of the recipes we developed, which one really hit the mark in terms of pushing forward with the larger scale production. And then from this, we also utilized the larger equipment, which is in our process hall. So again, cookers and mixers and our depositing systems to reproduce a finished product, which that client could then bring and test the market and test within a small setting. Key to a lot of this development work, and again, this is an area which some of our smaller clients struggle with from the start, is the ongoing microbiological assessments and sensory assessments. And it's really a lot of the work we do is, I suppose, cutting through what needs to be done here in terms of microbiological analysis and legally what does the client need to do to get this product safely onto shelf. So again, that was a key part of this project. And again, I suppose the end result of this project, when that client left our facility, they had a finished product with a proven shelf life, which they could then bring to market. And just to give you an overview, and I know colleague touched on this area, but in terms of product development examples, how we've worked with various clients, again, cheese, our sister site in Moore Park, and from my deals extensively of dairy products, but the options really are endless in terms of the supports we can offer in cheese and yogurt manufacture. Again, there's two clients I'm actually working with in terms of milk-based beverages. So again, flavored milk beverages, again, quite an easy project to get up and running at our site, but could add huge value to a farm enterprise. Again, on our examples, just fermented meats, which we've seen a huge growth really in the last 2 to 3 years in terms of fermented meat products and cured and dry aged ham and beef products, which is something that we're really specializing now actually at the moment. And indeed, we're trying to develop a course within this space, which will be on offer, I would imagine, in the next year. It's also important to note that we do deliver a number of courses throughout the year, of which we're actually running a new product development course at the end of November, which I would draw people's attention to. Again, a great course for a startup company to get involved with. And indeed, ready meals. We've worked with a number of clients at small scale level who've developed the product from scratch, which is then moved to co-manufacture and create a business from a ready meal. large space we're working in at the moment again, and it's just to give you a brief example of how easy it is to engage and get a project up and going. I engaged with a client randomly at the National Ploughing Championships 3 weeks ago, I think it was now, and we've since moved forward to a freeze-dried project, so that particular client is looking at some produce from their own farm. Can they dry it and offer that as a premium offering? And that's really started in the last few days. We've started actually the physical drying and analysis on that product. And again, some other clients we've worked with, in particular with organic oats, we've developed some organic porridge and oat snacks as well. So really the options are endless with the equipment and with the knowledge we have on site. And again, if anyone needs to contact me, they can do so direct. And thanks very much.
So I'm very pleased now to introduce two people to talk about the Bia Innovator campus in Athenry in Galway. That's Alan Farrell from Galway County Council and Elaine Donohue from the Bia Innovator campus. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Sinead, and thanks to Board Bia and the department and for having us here this morning. Just give a general introduction. My name is Alan Farrell. I'm a director with Galway County Council and also director on the board of the Bia Innovator campus, which is a project that is being grown in Athenry in County Galway. I suppose just in terms of who we are, Galway County Council as leading the local economic and social development of the area. So agriculture, food and the hospitality sector is critically important to the economy of the county and indeed the region. So back in 2014, we started looking at how we would develop a project to support that. We brought all the different agencies, the different people from farm to fork together to look at what were the challenges out there and how we could address them. And much of what Claire and Helen have described earlier on is what we're actually trying to address. So we approached Teagasc, who have a campus there in Athenry, who were very quick to come on board. Ourselves and Teagasc would have put in the seed funding that would have enabled the initial concept to be developed, to provide match funding for the grant schemes which we got from Enterprise Ireland, the Department of Rural and Community Development. We also brought on board the ETB, which Barry referenced on multiple occasions. I suppose it's about the whole training and development side, and very much a rounded approach in terms of addressing the needs of the sector. The Western Development Commission, and we also brought in two local groups, the Athenry Community Council and Skull, which was a social enterprise, a very successful social enterprise in Galway. And obviously working very closely with the local enterprise office, Breeder, our local head of enterprise, and indeed the local enterprise network, which Tomas will talk about later. I suppose, why did we do it? And the reasons were there was a lack of access to appropriate facilities, and expertise is a major barrier to growth for artisan and small producers, as Professor Wall said in UCD. And again, food hubs are not just a flash in the pan. They are incredibly innovative businesses models, specifically addressing some of our producers' most overwhelming challenges. And again, that's borne out by the research that was presented here this morning. So that's the reason we established, and the map that you see next is an important piece as well. Looking at it in terms of what we want to achieve from Bia, we want to become a one-stop shop for everyone, where they can come and we will be able to direct them to the number of different agencies. There will be on-site support from our own staff and from the staff that are provided through Teagasc, which are our food technologists linking in with Shay. And I suppose if you look at the map there, you'll see why it's important. There is the Teagasc campus in Athenry, but very importantly, we're linked in with the Teagasc campus in Moore Park and also in Ashtown. And I suppose that link to that facility is a key piece for us in terms of being able to work together. And this whole model is based around collaboration. I suppose even from the funding perspective, you know, we wouldn't be where we are today without Enterprise Ireland or without the Department of Rural and Community Development, and indeed the LEADER programme, Galway County Council as well. And it's about bringing that collaboration from the very start, when we started looking at what are the challenges, one of which was the many partners out there, and how can we bring them together, and at the same time provide essential infrastructure which would help with product development, to look at how we get route to market, how we can bring around the simple things like packaging, you know, and then the training. I suppose when we were working on it, we looked at it from the whole thing in terms of farm to fork. And that was working very much like, if you look at it from our open door policy, we went to individuals, we've got entrepreneurs, we've got farmers, we've food producers, we've chefs, we have the hotel, restaurants and cafes, we have students and anyone that wants to progress. So they're really, it's an open door, and very much part of our role in it is to actually work across all the agencies and be able to signpost people to where they want to go. So we have expertise and we have a team that's working locally that's able to provide that expertise, but they'll also, it's not about duplicating the work of the other agencies that are out there. It's about adding value and about ensuring that that collaboration and the approach of working together and signposting people so that we can make their journey easier. And that involves working with people that have done it before, experts in the industry. So they share their experience and share their learning. And my colleague Elaine, who's the general manager, will go into some of the details of what we've been doing to date, which demonstrates how that actually works. This is just a visual of the campus. It's currently under construction. There's about 27,000 square feet. You look at it there, we've got the building at the back, the starter units. We've got 9 indoor units there. They're 60 square meters, full food grade quality, ready for production, and they'll be leased out to individuals. The ones at the back then are growth units. They're 240 square meters. 3 of those are available. And then at the main building here at the front, which is the nucleus of the operation, we've got a Bia Upper, which is about how you accelerate your business, Bia Olus, Bia Blas, and Bia Upper, which is all about helping businesses to start up. And within these areas here, we've got shared kitchens, we've got a business engagement zone, we've got an auditorium, we've got training space, we've networking facilities, we've meet the buyer. So there's a whole range of services that are provided there, which Elaine will now go into as part of the thing. So I'd like to just introduce Elaine Donohue. She's our general manager in the Be Innovator campus.
Good morning, everyone, and thanks for inviting us to speak. So I'm just going to take on the next stage from where Alan discussed. I suppose our aim is to support any individual who wants to innovate or add value to an existing food business or start up a new one. So a critical part, I suppose, of this development is having a team that understand the food industry, that have rolled up their sleeves and have worked within that industry before and understand, I suppose, what's coming down the tracks for a food producer at any level. So our team is comprised of a range of different individuals. Sandra liaises day to day with our food businesses, has worked, has a food science background, but has worked commercially as a buyer. So she does an awful lot of work just from initial introductions, scoping out what support a business needs, where they need to go, where their gaps are, and I suppose helping them to navigate what they need for the particular position that they're in at any one time. And I suppose every single farm business or food producer is on a different path, going in a different direction. So really it's about fast tracking them for the position that they're at this minute in time. Colm and Anita are 2 Teagasc technologists. They're part of Shay Hannon's team, the Prepared Consumer Food Centre, and the overall Teagasc food programme. But their purpose really is to support the science aspect. There's so much regulation when you think of a food business. I know food is a common I suppose, interaction for all people, but when it comes to actually producing a safe product, there's a huge amount of regulation, and trying to get food producers at an early stage to understand the science and understand the standards they need to hit, particularly if they have ambitions to supply the full retail sector or even export. You really need to raise the bar. So delighted to have Colm and Anita working with the team there. My own background is very much in the commercial aspect of things, exports. I would have been on the Board Bia Fellowship programme in the UK. So very much I understand everything from how the retail structure works, how to export, what are all the wide-ranging challenges that a food producer has. Devon, another member of our team, looks after all the community aspects, linking learning, events, projects. And Florian, who only joined us last week, is worked in Kerry Foods in meat coating systems for years, but is now looking at our international aspect of food within the Be Innovator campus and linking a lot of our EU projects. So we're looking forward to next year having an ag tech specialist and a third innovation specialist join the team when we open. So this is kind of our idea around learning. I suppose there's many ways in which you can learn. When I was abroad, I would have learned an awful lot by meeting other food entrepreneurs, by going to trade shows, by understanding their challenges. So it's not just a very linear process where you do a course. So we link 3 different aspects. One is expert advice, mentorship. Our team carry out an awful lot of that mentorship, and we link with the local enterprise offices as well on that. We link back into the Teagasc prepared consumer foods team as well for any information we need. But also there's opportunities to upscale an awful lot of the smaller food businesses that are looking to expand. They need to set up quality manuals. They need to set up structures within their company across their commercial end, supply chain, procurement. And I suppose trying to understand what new skills your team needs and to bring them with you is critical, particularly in the environment we're in, where it's really hard to get that resource. And the third element then is very much community. So it's very important you learn from your peers. Food producers have huge respect for their peers that have walked in their shoes previously, have maybe all the bruises and burns to prove it. And we're really delighted that through Enterprise Ireland, we ran Bread and Jam Ireland this year, which is very much a range of topics monthly that target burning issues that food producers struggle with at the minute. So everything from funding your business to, once you get a retail listing, how to make the best of that. And very much we always have a local producer, a regional and a national or international success story. So we've had over, by the end of the year, we'll have had over 550 participants on that Bread and Jam initiative. So it's very important that people connect. I know it's been quite difficult during COVID. We haven't met as much in person. So this, I suppose, is where we believe our innovation campus is critical to success, in that I suppose there's a long food system and everyone plays a part in it. And often for food producers, there's a lot of knots within that system that they need to unravel to be successful. And I suppose innovation to us is key. So 80% of productivity increases in the food system are owed to innovation. So making progress, making that next step for you and being helped along. For you, it might be new product development, but it might not. It might be just improving the product you have, making sure it's commercially viable so that your business is economically sustainable. So we see ourselves as very much a key stepping stone, and we link into obviously all the different areas that you need to learn. But as a food producer, you wear many hats, and it's not the easiest task. So everything from manufacturing, understanding what that actually is when you maybe scale up from producing something in a cafe kitchen, procurement, supply chain, where do I source equipment? How do I get a sustainable supplier of ingredients? If it's my own ingredients, how do I make sure that the food science and quality aspect of that is correct and that I'm achieving the correct standards? You also have a huge amount of work to market your product and ensure that you're managing your business commercially, because you're trying to add value to your income. You're trying to make sure you have a sustainable income into the future. So this is just to give you an idea of Bread and Jam, I suppose, what we've ran from the community aspect, everything from becoming a social media sensation on a budget or funding your business growth. But it's very important that you hear from other entrepreneurs and see how they've done what they've done. And the difficult is not always a straight path, and it's not always easy, but it's good to learn that it is possible, and it's important to just take that information and use it to your own advantage. So we've had a hugely successful year with that. I suppose next year we're rolling out a series of events to really target the food sector with the local enterprise office level. So we're doing a technical series very much around getting your retail ready, your labelling, climbing the manufacturing ladder. So some people are really at domestic levels of production, and they really need to understand all the different regulations, systems, manuals that you need to put in place to be really successful. Getting your shelf life right, I suppose. Really just to equip people with the basics of what they need as they go along with their food business. We have a startup boot camp taking place as well. So very much just how do you manage those growth steps, everything from your people to your product, and linking in the science behind that. Kitchen to manufacture is one that we've spent our year looking at this. So it's really important in that an awful lot of the real small producers that are supplying farmers markets are very much at kitchen scale. And they often could be turning a chef into a production supervisor or quality supervisor. And there's a huge amount of paperwork involved. So very much trying to help them review their business strategy, how to get their product ready for retail or food service, even understanding what packaging sizes you need and what your customer is looking for, and just helping with technical clinics around that, getting a good production layout from low risk to high risk. So that's a big one for next year. And then this year we ran the start of our big pitch with Avoca. We had over 50 applications. We listed 20, and over 70% of them got listings with Avoca and Aramark. So I suppose we see ourselves as a facilitator. Buyers are really busy. They're dealing with all sorts of issues in supply chain, pricing at the minute. So for us to be able to shortlist and do that is fantastic. We're looking at more next year with Fallon and Byrne, and we've just branched that out because I suppose Be Innovator, we see ourselves as facilitators of all the little clinches in the chain of the food system that need support and ironing out. So this is another concept we have for next year, is very much around an Irish open drinks forum, where we want to look at it from grain to glass. So again, working with our peers in Teagasc, looking at everything from heritage crops the whole way through to the export piece, and how to everything from bottling, even innovation through wood, and getting different panel discussions around that. So really looking forward to actually looking at that farm to fork in the entire chain and how we can facilitate innovation around that. Just to take you through some of our facilities, I know Ellen touched on it earlier on, but very much you can walk in the door to meet our team as someone with just an idea and maybe an interest in food, to someone with a family farm business, but also existing businesses that maybe, you know, you've had a couple of tough years and you now want to prepare for the next stage of growth. So this is our building one, the 2-story element that you would have seen earlier on. We have a welcome area. We have a buyer pitching and showcase room. Here at the top, we have an auditorium where 2 chefs can cook side by side and we can run lectures. Just off that, then we have a 48-seater breakout space with a 9-screen wall and some meeting space as well. So very much all our spaces are for collaboration, for businesses to use. And we think it's really important that food industry allows themselves to professionalize. So obviously you see in tech, you see lots of spaces for engaging, professionalizing. Food industry, often it can end up meeting a buyer around the kitchen table or somewhere that's less than ideal. This is our buyer showcase room. So very much you can present to a buyer in Dubai if you like to do that remotely, but also we have display space for frozen, chilled, ambient, and you can take your buying team and I suppose put your best foot forward in pitching to them, and they don't have to be in around your manufacturing space all the time. So it just helps the industry to really progress. This is the auditorium. Another usage for this is very much around, I suppose we've all gone online after COVID. So even if producers have products that they want to, I suppose, record videos, you know, show a product being used or demonstrated, they can use our facilities to do that. This is the audiovisual room next door. Again, lots of spaces, whether it be food groups or whether it's training or whatever it might be, lots of opportunity to use these spaces. Upstairs then we have our business engagement zone, meeting pods, phone booths, a podcast suite. So very much allowing our food industry to really professionalize and run their business. We also have a 16-station culinary training space. So again, can be used from everything from chef training, but also to if you have a customer like Compass Group or Palace Foods and you want to take their chefs in and show them how to use your product in different ways, that there's different ways to engage and sell your product to them. So we look forward to having all our facilities. We're 70% complete at the minute and looking forward to completing the buildings and getting up and running, but we're running an awful lot of programs already. This was the concept that Alan spoke earlier around de-risking early stage food businesses. So if you are an early stage food business, you're probably producing in a space that's less than ideal from a regulatory perspective. So the idea here is really that you can come in and use our shared production spaces, rented 4 hours per week, right up to a full week, rent a desk, rent a dedicated space. We have a meat, dairy, seafood and general units for use, and we've plugged in the best of equipment, obviously partnered with Teagasc in the design of these events, these spaces, and making sure that people can really get off the ground. So we at Be Innovator will operate the kitchens to BRC standard, which is the basic standard for supplying a lot of the retail markets at the minute. And I suppose food producers that use these spaces will learn to operate at far higher standards than they currently do. As they progress then, they can rent a starter unit or a growth unit, but the idea is that you're not making a major capital investment until you know your business is sustainable and it's viable for you. And then you focus your investment on your customer, your route to market, your product development, rather than sinking so much cash. I know Barry touched on it earlier on, into capital facilities that really are a checkbox for regulation. So they're not as such helping the growth aspect of your business. So these are just some of the types of people that have come to us and what their needs have been. So some people come with literally just an idea and they don't even know what it's like to work in a food business. So sometimes we'll send them out shadowing. We'll talk them through a basic setup, the challenges, the concepts. We try and figure out what their learning needs are and direct them to some basic courses. Even just, I suppose, a feasibility study and mentoring just to kick them off and I suppose dip a toe in initially. Then we have lots of businesses around the country who are existing and maybe stuck at some aspect or another. And almost all these bubbles are some sort of a hat that a food producer needs to wear. So we try to help unstick a producer wherever they're stuck. So we have some fabulous products up and down the country that are really well made to great standards, but the business aren't making a good profit on it. So they need to look at their commercials. They need to sometimes understand the capacity and the growth stages. If you're in a premises, how many units can you make in this premises until you need to move to another one? And when you're 80% at capacity, you need to plan your next stage of growth. How am I going to fund that? Even just basics from scaling up equipment, you know, where do I start? Where do I buy this equipment? Where do I get funding and support? So we help at all types of those areas, just trying to direct and trying to answer questions. And I suppose our team are there throughout the whole journey so people can come back again and again and work with us. So that's just a snapshot tour today, but very much you can fill out an expression of interest form on our website, sign up to our mailing list, follow us on social, but we're happy to help any food business around the country. Thank you.
Thank you very much to Alan and Elaine. I was down in Athenry earlier this year and I saw the facilities, but I suppose to hear the thinking that's gone into the planning of this and the real collaboration across agencies is really impressive. So next, the research report earlier referred to the importance of well-regulated farmers markets. So we're very pleased to have Nuala Stewart from Cork County Council, who is going to give us an insight into the arrangements for markets in Cork, as well as touching on community gardens.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm going to talk mostly about urban markets, and then I'll touch on some of the community gardens. So I work for Cork City Council, and I am responsible for, among other things, the English market. So look, urban markets have a huge impact on cities, and local authorities support them for various reasons. They obviously have the potential to drive economic development and social and cultural regeneration. They also support local food chains. They add to the tourism and heritage product of the city. They promote healthy eating and sustainable food practices. And they obviously animate public spaces and city living. There are lots of markets in Cork City, and some of them fall in the kind of private commercial sector and the farmers markets, which are often run for non-profit. But there are 3 markets in the city that the City Council is particularly involved in, and I'm going to talk about 2 of those in particular. I'm going to talk about the English market, and I'm going to talk about the Mulcahy Saturday market. So the English market, I always like to give a little bit of history. It is one of the oldest municipal markets in the world. It's essentially operated on the same site for over 200 years, starting off as a meat market and then adds to over the centuries. We usually say that it's withstood famine, fire, flood, war, recession, and now we're able to add a global pandemic, having survived the COVID restrictions. It's not always been the success that it has now. It's been through multiple guises, and I suppose in the 70s and 80s, the City Council itself attempted to sell the market to private developers. But the market's always had this special place in the city and in the hearts of the people. So a campaign was launched by the traders and the general public to oppose that plan. That campaign in the 80s and a fire which ripped through the Princess Street side of the market at the same time essentially paved the way for a major refurbishment of the market. And I suppose for the City Council to take seriously its responsibilities as custodians of the market. And that's paved the way for the market that we have today. So just a little bit of information about it. We've 52 stalls that are operated by around 43 traders. It remains primarily a produce market with meat, fish, veg and deli still accounting for over half of the stalls. The traders and the mix of produce in the market has evolved over time to take into account new food trends. So we have a good mix now of vegan, organic and international produce. The majority are family run, and we do try to insist that the trader is present as much as possible. And at least 2/3 of the stalls are operated by the owner on a daily basis. And that's a huge attraction to customers. They want to come in, they want to meet the producer, they want to talk to the person who knows the most about the produce. Many of the traders have been in the market for generations. So, for example, we've Caslin's Butchers, which is now a fifth generation family butcher. They opened in the market in 1906. We've O'Reilly's, which is 3rd generation tripe and drisheen supplier, who've operated in the market since the early 1900s. But I suppose it's the profile of the market internationally that gives it a unique platform in which to showcase Irish food brands and to market Irish food brands. The difficulty for us really in some ways is that the traders in the market are there on long-term leases, they're long-term commercial leases. So in general, the stalls don't become available very often. And when they do, they're effectively sold on the open market. So that can mean that access to the market is beyond the means of the very traders that we want to encourage in, which is the small primary producers. So the startup stall was a concept that was developed to try and counteract this and to give small food businesses and local producers an opportunity really to get a foot in the door, to try the market and see does it work for them. It's very easy in, easy out terms. People can come in on a simple license agreement. They can stay from anything from 6 weeks to 6 months. We've had a lot of success with the startup stall. One of our businesses there in the picture, My Goodness, they started in the startup stall as our first vegan only stall in the market, and they've gone on now to have, they actually have 2 stalls in the market, 2 permanent stalls. Other traders have gone on to reach agreement with other traders to stock their produce, and that's their avenue to the market. The current trader that we have in there at the moment is a really innovative food business. They're specialised in seasonal fermented produce that's made from local foraged ingredients. So they're making sodas, sauces and cordials. And we'd be really hopeful that that they'll take a permanent presence in the market because they seem to be doing really well. So that's a bit about the English market. Just to talk then about the Mulcahy market. Again, it's a really popular market in the city, operates on a Saturday. Again, very historic. I understand it's been operating on that site since the 1840s. There are some of the traditional traders that have been there for multiple generations, but they tend to focus on kind of bric-a-brac and second-hand goods. But what we've been trying to do, and I suppose what it's become over recent years, is a kind of more trendier food market. And we've been trying to keep the focus on primary produce again. It's very easy to get started. It's very easy to get in. There's a simple application form, HSE registration if you're a food business, some insurance and a small fee. And you can see the fee there is very reasonable. It equates to about €60 a day if you're trading. The City Council provides other supports in terms of advertising, marketing and promotion. And it has become quite a successful market recently. And we're working with the traders to see if we can grow it further. One of the challenges for us is around preserving the ethos of the market, and it was welcome to see that was kind of acknowledged in the Board Bia presentation. Look, we're really proud that in all of our markets we have some fantastic artisan local food traders who specialise in hot food or food to go. Some of these are destinations in their own right, somewhere like the Farmgate Cafe there, which takes high quality ingredients from the market and produces high quality foods, is fantastic. They help to showcase the produce of the producers, they add to the vibrancy of the market, and they create that kind of unique atmosphere of smells and sounds. But this is a huge challenge for us, and the challenge is maintaining the balance between primary produce and the kind of hot food to go. I participated in a Market Cities conference with the Academy of Urbanism last year, and it was really clear that this is a challenge facing markets across the globe. So for every inquiry I get from a producer, from a farmer or a butcher or a baker or a grocer, I probably get 10 inquiries from somebody who wants to trade in hot food. And we really want to try and keep the balance on the primary produce and keep the markets as that primary produce market for local people. So I'm looking forward to reading the Board Bia report in more detail and seeing how we can support producers more. What are the barriers to them trading in markets and how can we support them? We'd also love to be working more in cooperation with some of the support agencies to see the ways that we can bring producers together to support them to access markets. The market research that we do for the English market shows that the #1 association people have for the English market is fresh, local Irish artisan food products. So if we can create opportunities for new businesses that are in that space to access our customers, we know they'll flourish in the market. So we're really keen to talk to them and to see how we can support them and make it easy for them to get to market. So I was just asked to say a little bit about community food growing and allotments. Yeah. So these are supported really through our parks and recreation teams and through our Healthy Island partnership. The allotments are really successful. We've 85 allotments in Ballincollig and 52 in Churchfield. I suppose this is more about people producing food for their own consumption or for their community consumption, but they've become really popular. We've a waiting list for allotments and we have weekly applications from people who want to be considered for a plot. The Green Spaces for Health then is a Healthy Island funding programme that supports community-based growing. So in the last 2 years, we've been working through that Green Spaces for Health initiative and with community forums and community groups to establish community park gardens in existing city council parks. So essentially we're designating areas within community parks like Bishopstown, Glashtove and Douglas, where we're establishing raised beds and growing areas that people can plant, they can grow, and where the community are working together. These have been a really great success and our parks team are looking at rolling them out across the city. Just a few numbers on that. We've a coordinators post through Healthy Island, which is providing the coordination to enable a lot of this activity to happen. Currently, we've 24 community gardens and allotment schemes in the city. And again, we're adding funding ourselves through our Parks and Recreation department. I suppose what we're trying to achieve, it really is to give people an opportunity within the city to grow for themselves, to learn about sustainable food production and to work together in the community. We're looking at building on this now and expanding into a bigger area with the Cork Food Policy Council. But in order to achieve that, we're looking for securing more additional EU funding. So look, that's it for me. Thank you. I'm delighted to talk to producers or support agencies around how we can work on the markets programme and support producers to get into our markets. And I'm sure other local authorities have urban markets and would be really keen to work with producers in their local area. So thanks.
Thank you very much, Nuala, for that really interesting presentation. So next we have 2 speakers from my own organisation, the Department of Agriculture, Food and the Marine. First, we have Sinead Mulcahy, who will speak to us about investment aids for the horticulture sector and for producer groups. And Sinead will be followed directly by Annamarie McNally, who will talk about our Rural Innovation and Development Fund, which has funded a number of projects that link food with tourism in a particular region. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Today, I'm just going to speak about some of the supports available to the horticultural sector. To introduce, my name is Sinead Mulcahy. I'm from the Horticulture and Plant Health Division based in Backweston in Celbridge. So I'll be covering two support schemes that are offered by the department. The first one, we'll look at the scheme of investment aid for the development of the commercial horticultural section. And then secondly, I have just a few slides on the producer organisations. So to start with the scheme for the commercial horticultural sector, I suppose the aim of this scheme is to assist in the development of the horticultural sector. And also as part of that, we cover beekeeping as well. So the scheme is aimed at those engaged in commercial horticulture production. Sorry, now the slide just in commercial horticultural production, but as I mentioned, we also cover individual beekeepers. So just some of the areas that we cover would be those engaged in field vegetables, mushroom, protected food crops, herbs, growing herbs and other green crops like that, amenity crops, soft fruit, the apple sector, and also beekeeping. So I suppose the scheme itself, it provides grant aid for capital investments in specialised plant and equipment for the hort sector. I suppose the scheme is confined specifically to new investments specifically related to horticulture. And the scheme objectives are to promote the diversification of on-farm activities, improve the quality of the products that are being produced, to facilitate environmentally friendly practices, and also as well as part of that to improve working conditions for staff as well in the facility. So the scheme, the 2023 scheme is due to be opened in the next couple of weeks. We have an increased budget this year of 10 million, and this scheme is 100% funded by the Irish government. Just a little bit about the grant aid. So the grant aid rate there is funding is allocated up to 40% on approved investments. And then in the case of young farmers who meet that criteria or young growers, there's an increase rate there of 50%. So I suppose just some more specifics about the scheme. There's a minimum investment rate there of 10,000 excluding VAT. In the case thereof for beekeeping, this is reduced down to 2,000. And I suppose the types of investments are very varied, from mechanisation to efficiency and environmental products, investments to improve the utilisation of this existing structures. So my next slide, I have a bit more detail about where the spending goes, and I'll just go into a bit more detail about the types of investments that we covered. So I suppose to apply for the scheme, there's an application form to be completed. And as part of that application process, the applicants must submit quotations for their investments that they're planning on purchasing. As part of that, the horticultural enterprise, it must be shown to be viable. So a business plan covering a minimum of 2 years, along with a set of accounts, must be included with the application. I suppose from our point of view, the investment, has to be shown to be justified. So each project that's submitted is assessed on a case-by-case basis, taking into account the business plan that's been set out and the project profile submitted with the application. So each applicant, as part of the application form, has to kind of submit a project profile, what their plans are for the future, and to justify this investment. So as I said there, this just shows some of the money that we've spent. So in 2021, we paid out 7.8 million, we've paid out to growers. So this represented an approximate investment by the horticulture producers of 19.5 million, which is a phenomenal figure. As you can see there from the figures, our field veg sector was where I suppose the biggest chunk of the money went, at about approximately 2.5 million. So I suppose just some of the examples of some of the investment projects would have been grading packing lines for root vegetables, vegetable boxes, storage boxes, vegetable planters, irrigation equipment, harvesters, flow, shrink tray, packing lines, palletizers. So a wide variation of investments have been seen that. Then I suppose the next biggest then was in the soft fruit protected crop sector, so 1.9 million. Again, kind of varied investments there, label applicators to greenhouses, flow wrappers, solar PV panels as well. So in the nursery crop side, and 1.1 million again, kind of you can go from purchasing the foliage crops. We've seen a kind of an increase in the cut foliage sector, bulbs, again, greenhouses come into this, and irrigation equipment. On the mushroom side there, it's 1.1 million was paid out in 2021. Again, a wide variation of works carried out, investments, upgrading existing mushroom tunnels, inputting new mushroom tunnels. And then again, as we mentioned, like one of the things is improving facilities for staff. So we can look at supporting canteen facilities and other things to improve staff welfare. Then on the apple side, we had 0.8 million. So just some of the investments that come under the apple side of it is the apple trees themselves. We can contribute towards the purchase of those, stakes, tree guards, frost protection equipment, orchard sprayers, all those specialised equipment. And then the others covers, I suppose, a wide variation. This is where our beekeepers come in as well. So covering from hives, honey processing equipment, extraction equipment. So again, as I've said already, a wide variation in that. So as I mentioned, that the 2023 scheme is due to open in the next couple of weeks. Usually open in October time, and the closing date will be the second or third week in December for the applications. We realise that it takes a bit of time to get quotes and get a business plan together, so there is kind of a good period there for to submit applications. So for more information, you can go onto the Department of Agriculture's website, and just up in the top right hand corner you'll see for schemes and services. And if you go to horticulture, then currently it's last year's scheme. So if you want to go on and have a look at the previous terms and conditions and application form, it will give you an idea of what will be there for the 2023 scheme. If you have any questions or queries after today, there's the horticultural grants email there, horticulturalgrants@agriculture.gov.ie. So you can pop us along with email if you have any queries on any aspects of it or the upcoming scheme. And then as well, there's just a phone number there to get through to the office, our section there in Back Weston at 01505 8803. So just moving on to just two slides on the producer organisation scheme. So what a producer organisation scheme, specifically for the fruit and veg sector. So they encourage producers of fruit and veg to jointly market their production in order to strengthen their position producers. So there's many benefits to the producer organisations. It said enhanced bargaining power for them, improved competitiveness and enhanced market development. So there are 5 current recognised fruit and veg producer organisations in Ireland. Like that, the producer organisations, POs, they market their members' produce, looking after the concentration supply and ensuring, but they must ensure that there's adequate control of the expenditure, and also they must retain records to substantiate their actions. So I suppose there is a number of issues there, to be recognised as a PO, you must have 5 active producer members with a minimum VMP, which is the turnover of 2.5 million. So I suppose while the department recognise POs in many sectors, the EU provide funding for operational programmes, but this is only available for those in the fruit and veg sector. So like that, in order to be eligible for this EU funding, the PO must be recognised by the member state. So as we said there, that in Ireland to be recognised, you must have a member of the 5 active producers with the minimum VMP, the value market production of 2.5 million. So once recognised then by the state, the PO can draw up a 3 to 7 year operational programme with specific actions. So there'll be a list of eligible actions, and they can pick from that list then to kind of pick those that suit their own goals. And these actions can, you know, focus on various things from marketing produce, improving efficiencies and mitigating climate change. So from the 1st of January, there's just some detail there about some the aid that will be payable on the operational programmes. So newly recognised or merit POs will be eligible for at least 60 and up to 80% aid on their operational programmes. Existing POs eligible for at least 50 and up to 80% aid. So the aid is claimed and paid in a year in arrears. And then the budget is set, as we said, as a percentage of the VMP or their turnover. So that's in relation there to the fruit and vegetable producer organisations. And just then finally, just the early stage support for producer organisations. As mentioned, that the department can recognise POs in various sectors, as we mentioned, the fruit and vegetables, but also in tillage, potato, plant, beef, sheep sectors. I suppose it's said, though, that the EU funding is only available for those in the fruit and vegetable sector. But just from the 1st of January 2023, any PO in any of the sectors will be eligible for additional funding, 10,000 per annum for the first 3 years towards their administration costs. And then there's 3,000 a once-off payment towards advisory services. If you're looking for any other information on the producer organisations, there's an email there, po@agriculture.gov.ie, for more information and a copy of the terms and conditions. Sorry, it was just a very quick overview of the POs, but if anyone's looking for any more information, they can email that email address. So that's all I have. Just want to thank you for having me here today.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Annamarie McNally, and I'm based in the Department of Agriculture, Food and the Marine offices in Cavan. Thanks very much for having me here today. Thanks for that. I'm going to give an overview of the Rural Innovation Development Fund, which is administered by the department, just with a particular focus on the Agri-Food Tourism Initiative. I'll start with background to the RIDF. This fund was established by the department to address issues that were identified in the report of the Commission for the Economic Development of Rural Areas. It's abbreviated to the CEDRA report. This report suggested that there was a significant economic potential in rural areas and recommended a number of actions by government departments to support the long-term development of rural Ireland. The fund is used to support proposals that promote and develop projects which stimulate and energise the rural economy and communities by the development of a strong sense of community involvement and with the injection of capital into local community. Funding of 1.5 million has been provided by the department under this fund annually to support a range of projects linked to the recommendations of the CEDRA report. The 4 initiatives that we currently provide funding for are the agri-food tourism, which I'll talk about later, the female rural entrepreneurs. This programme is targeted at nascent female entrepreneurs living in rural areas, and it helps address challenges that they face. The programme that's actually been developed for this is known as Acorns, and it's been very successful so far. It's now in its 8th year, and over 50 female entrepreneurs will be commencing the 8th cycle next month. The other food waste reduction we also fund, and in recent years we provided funding for the support of projects which are designed to reduce food waste generated by food businesses, retailers, wholesalers and suppliers. The Savour Food Programme is one example, which is run by Clean Technology Centre, and it works with businesses to reduce waste. Carlow County Council are also implementing a programme here known as Optimisation Plus, working with businesses to reduce food waste, and Food Cloud has received funding. They connect retailers with local charities, allowing them to donate surplus food on a daily basis. Social farming is the other initiative that we provide funding towards. This offers people who avail of a range of support services the opportunity to spend time on a family farm in a supportive and inclusive environment. The funding is provided to Social Farming Ireland, which is led by Leitrim Development Company, for the development of the National Social Farming Network in collaboration with other local development companies. And we also provide funding to a number of social farming models. So today I'm just focusing on agri-food tourism in particular. So it's essentially the practice of offering an activity to visit areas of well-known agricultural produce and to sample and taste the local or regional cuisine or specialities. That's a kind of a very broad explanation of it. It includes a wide variety of activities that involve the links between agriculture and the food produced at local or regional level. So it may involve, for instance, agri-food tours or trails, participation in agricultural endeavours, or buying produce direct from a farm. It also includes local farmers markets, farmer and artisan market schemes that support and are paired with local and seasonal food producers. It's a great opportunity for rural businesses, including farmers and producers, to develop their products and services and connect with the community and visitors. The initiatives should be underpinned with the objective of energising the rural economy by encouraging job creation and sustainable enterprise development. This funding provided aligns with the goals and actions of the Department's Food Vision 2030 strategy, which refers to opportunities for primary producer diversification into rural and agri-tourism and ecotourism, as well as developing linkages between local food and tourism offerings. The initiatives should also take account of the sustainable development goals, specific targets, for example, to devise and implement policies to promote sustainable tourism that creates jobs and promotes local culture and products. Some of the examples of elements that could be included in a proposal include food drink festivals, Cromain Sea Fest and Taste of Donegal are some examples of projects which we are funding this year. Development of agri-food trails experiences such as the Burren Food Trail or Farm to Fork trails, which are developed by Wicklow Naturally. Events which promote local food artisan market experiences and showcase events that promote local produce, crafts, businesses, authentic culinary or traditional skills. Also inter-county collaborations which integrate and promote inter-county or regional agri-food experiences. Funding for supports such as websites or guidance handbooks. Earlier this year, we issued a call for proposals inviting applications under this initiative for projects supporting agri-food tourism initiatives. Funding of 300,000 was available this year, and there's a maximum of 25,000 be paid out to each project that's been successful. And it's just funding is actually for current expenditure, so it's important to note that funding for capital works is not allowed. We received over 40 applications this year, which has increased significantly from the 15 or so applications that we would have got a number of years ago, so it's becoming more popular. The funding is awarded on a competitive basis, so all eligible applications are evaluated against the award criteria set out in the call for proposals documentation. Funding has been provided this year to 19 projects in total, and all of these projects are currently underway. This slide just provides a broad spectrum of the initiatives that are being funded this year. I won't list them out individually, but as you can see, their projects are very diverse with a number of food trails and experiences, some food festivals, including a seafood festival, along with a number of farmers markets. There's also a very good geographical spread of initiatives throughout the country. So it just gives an indication of what we are funding. This is a very brief overview here of one of the projects that we have funded this year, Taste Waterford. So it'll give you some further insight into the type of projects that could be funded. This initiative involves the building of the Taste Waterford brand for the long term, along with the development of taste tours and taste trails and ongoing publicity of the new brand. The new Taste Waterford brand and the website was officially launched in May of this year with an event held near the Comera Mountains. This event was attended by representatives from local authorities, from the Department of Agriculture, Fáilte Ireland, other stakeholders, along with the press and a range of the members of Taste Waterford. So the event also acted as a networking event for those members. Another element in this initiative was the development of a taste tour, known as the Mountain Splendour Taste Tour, and it involved 4 members of the Taste Waterford brand. It's currently been finalised, but some of the highlights will include exploring the mountains and hearing stories from local food producers. This tour will be available soon, and it can currently be booked on the new Taste Waterford website. The Coastal Taste Trail is also due to be launched shortly. This is an example of some of the publicity around the Taste Waterford initiative. This is just a short extract along with a caption photograph from Waterford Today. Now, I've only provided highlights of one of the initiatives that we funded this year, but it gives a flavour of the type of proposals that could be eligible for funding. Just for any of the food businesses or producers here today that's interested in the agri-food tourism initiatives, it's hoped that funding will be available next year, subject to final approval by the Minister. And we will be issuing a call for proposals in January 2023. It's similar to last year, so it can be viewed on the gov.ie website. And a press release will be published in January on the department's website, along with updated documentation in relation to the call for proposals. It's expected the closing date will be sometime around end of February, early March in 2023. So I hope this initiative is of interest to some of you here today, and thank you very much for your time. If anyone has any queries in relation to that scheme or any of the schemes that we fund, they can be directed to the email ridf@agriculture.gov.ie. Thank you very much.
So thank you very much to Sinead and to Annamarie for their presentations. It's now my pleasure to welcome our colleague Claudia Saumell from Bord Bia, who will outline Bord Bia's supports for small and local food producers.
Thank you, Sinead. Thank you, everybody, and welcome everybody as well, the ones that they are dialing online. So my name is Claudia Saumell, and I'll be just giving an overview of the way that Bord Bia engages with food companies. What is the criteria for food companies kind of joining the client base of Bord Bia? And we'll have a look at some of the supports that we have in place now for those food companies. So first of all, we deal with companies manufacturing in the Republic of Ireland. We encourage companies to join the Origin Green program, which is the sustainability program that Bord Bia developed back in 2012, because sustainability is really kind of the core of our thinking. It underpins all our activities. And we think that, well, the companies that are interested in joining the program, they have kind of a large number of supports in the form of workshops, of mentoring, one-to-one mentoring. There's a dedicated mentor that will help the companies to build the plans and become Origin Green members. At the moment, we have over 90% of our food and drink exports come from Origin Green verified members. So, the other thing is that we have also kind of a lot of other capability supports, and we'll have a look at them in more detail in the next few slides. So if we look at the journey of a company, kind of being part, setting a company as part of the client base, there's a journey for those companies. And we can see that the number of supports and services vary as the company expands. So there are different support and services, and we have different levels depending on the size of the company and the ambition of this company to grow, but this services all the step of the way. So, and our ambition is basically to grow, to work with those companies closely so that we kind of help them navigate through this journey of growth and have the companies better prepared, better informed, and with the right tools to achieve their business goals. So if we had to put the different supports in blocks, I would like to mention these three. One is all the supports that we give companies in terms of the consumer trends and market insights, self-learning modules and guidelines so that the companies then can follow their own pace to learn and capability supports that includes mostly workshops and webinars. We have a dedicated team in Bia that they basically kind of develop workshops, and they could include kind of many different kind of types of content, from optimizing logistics, identifying your distributor. And we have launched recently kind of a new set of workshops for small businesses that they're called Scope for Growth. And it's kind of trying to help those small businesses to expand and increase their export reach outside the home market. So just kind of talking about more in detail about some of the supports, I'd like to put this one, the retailer programs. And this is kind of a perfect example of the collaboration, the interagency collaboration. Those programs have been running for a few years now. And even though we have all the programs kind of as part of one support, all these programs, they have different nuances between them. Some of the programs are more geared towards very small companies that maybe they are starting their journey, and just participating to these programs, maybe they will mean that they have the opportunity to be part of the business, the food business landscape. And there's other programs that maybe the participants, they require kind of a bigger scale, but the common denominator is that Bia is collaborating with those retailers and is supporting the food companies from the very, very early stages. It's worth mentioning that some of the food market traders, they can access, or they can progress their businesses from selling into a market to selling into a retail opportunity or food service operators by participating in some of those programs. We have around 100 companies participating in the programs every year combined. So another block of supports that I was making reference earlier on is the insights, researches, and information that we can provide to companies. All this information is housed in the Bia website, and we have an immense number of information there. But there's kind of a lot of information for companies if they want to kind of understand more market conditions and consumer insights. And maybe if I have to kind of call a few that would be interesting for this audience, we have some of the reports that are available for them, which would include, for instance, the Shopper Insight Cheese that we did back in 2019, Fresh Produce Report, Attitudes toward Organic Food, and Consumer Lifestyle Trends. And just accessing this information and these reports is as easy as navigating through our website, but there's also kind of the opportunity to contact our library by submitting the library form, and you can access this information like an online consultation or an in-person in our Bia offices. So another support that I'd like to mention is the supports that we give around the post-Brexit supports tracing with the UK. And that's particularly kind of geared towards those small companies that they are looking at expanding their business outside the home market, and maybe looking at the UK as the first step into the export business. And these supports, there's quite a variety, a different range of supports, but basically it's kind of there's a lot of workshops, and there's one-to-one mentoring, and all the inquiries, and they are kind of responded through these kind of workshops and sessions. So it's been a very successful. We work with some other collaborators, but there's been a few workshops during the last few years, not just in Dublin, but we try to do all these workshops around the country so that we can facilitate a larger number of participants. So another, I made reference as well to this, the self-learning information. So this is the learning zone. It's the platform we have in our website, and you have to register to participate and be able to access this information. You have to have kind of a minimum turnover of 100,000, and you have to be Origin member. But these modules will help the companies to grow, to expand, and to understand things like how to find a better distributor, how to deal and find opportunities in the food business, in the food service landscape, and there's many others. I mean, there's around 20 different modules that can be downloaded, and it's free access for all the companies. In addition, we have a section in our website that is dedicated to the farmers market. And basically what we have there, it's kind of resources that include how to set up a stall, setting up a food market, information about the different types of markets. And we also have kind of an interactive map listing all the different kind of locations where the markets are taking place. And in a way, it's kind of promoting the B2C awareness of when those markets and where those markets are happening. So another block of supports that we made reference before is the events. So Bord Bia, for instance, through Bloom, is providing a platform for small businesses to showcase their products. And alongside the garden exhibitions, we have kind of the food village, which is made of the food market, the Bloom Inn, the Quality Tent, and Love Irish Food, where over 90 companies participate every year showcasing their products. And we run as well market study visits, and this is kind of a very, it's a very interesting and we will always receive very good feedback from companies participating in market study visits, because it helps really to expand their thinking around their export reach opportunities and validates their market strategy. So it's basically a 2-day itinerary, and where the companies kind of participate in market induction. Maybe there's also kind of retail safaris, there's networking opportunities, and there's sometimes, depending on the location, there's visits to trade fairs. So this is basically some kind of a quick overview of the different supports that we have. I'm very happy to kind of share my contact details if somebody has any questions of what we've seen here, and also open to collaborate with the other agencies and to build up kind of a coherent support for this for the farmers market. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. Mark Christal is my name. I'm the Head of Food and Sustainability with Enterprise Ireland, and delighted to be joining this afternoon on behalf of the organisation. Just to thank Angela and Sinead for the invite, and as I said, we're really thrilled to be involved today. I'm just going to introduce the final 3 speakers, if I may, who are going to talk to you, I suppose, and reflect the importance of startups in the Enterprise Ireland food strategy, and that's supporting new startup companies and also supporting companies as they go to scale and they grow. And it'll be very much a feature of our presentations and the work we do. Firstly, I'm going to introduce Méabh, who's a regional colleague who's going to talk about our regions and infrastructure supports that are available to food startups. Tomás Hayes from the local enterprise office is then going to talk you through the extensive supports that our local enterprise office network provide to entrepreneurs around the country. And then Niall Coulson, my own colleague from Enterprise Ireland, is going to talk to you specifically about the work we do to support startups as they start and scale their journey. So I'll hand over to Méabh, who's going to kick us off. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mark. So as Mark said, I'm on the regional side, so I cover the West region, and I'm involved in different projects over there, including Bia Innovator. So delighted to see Elaine and Alan speaking earlier. I'm just going to give a whistle-stop tour about the regional funds that are specifically focused on food. So I guess why I've been requested to speak today is, prior to this role in the West, I was about 9 years in the food division in Enterprise Ireland, mainly on the food startup side, again working with in collaboration with Teagasc and Bord Bia on FoodWorks, but as well as that, working with established SMEs in food ingredients and looking at our natural resources across the country and what we could do in terms of increasing the value of our natural resources. So just having a quick look at the Regional Enterprise Development Fund. So ultimately this project came from the Action Plan for Jobs and our own National Enterprise Policy through the Department of Enterprise, Trade and Employment. And it really kick-started in 2015 when we looked across the country and really believed, I think, that we didn't have strong regional infrastructure to support our startups and to support our scaling companies. So I suppose that was the initial project. So we've had 3 calls to date in 2017, 2018 and 2019. And as you can see on the slide there, we've funded 79 projects in total, 68 through the Regional Enterprise Development Fund, which we have an acronym REDF. And then coming through the Brexit stimulus package, we have funded another 11 projects in the border region Donegal, Sligo, Leitrim, Cavan, Monaghan and Louth. So we have also had, based on COVID and the challenges of COVID, we have funded some of those existing projects to try and escalate and speed up the development, because as we all know, COVID was a bit of a challenge in terms of getting buildings up and running. So ultimately what we had hoped that the REDF project would do for Enterprise Ireland and for all our companies across Ireland is to provide strong infrastructure that they could start companies in and scale them in, but equally that there would be a huge amount of collaboration. And I think we've heard it from many speakers this morning, collaborating with the local enterprise offices, the ETBs, the higher education institutes, the local authorities, Board Bia, etc. And we have found that our projects are moving in that direction. So it's really, really important to see that. Just to say, the funding that we have provided through the REDF was at grant rate of 80%. So many of the local companies, so they would be development companies, community companies working with, as I said, in collaboration with state agencies, were funded at 80%. So I'm going to give just a very brief overview on the next slide, where we have just a summary of Ireland and what we've done in each region. And I won't dwell on that, and the pack will be available afterwards. So I'm going to spend my 10 minutes basically on the next slide. I'm going to look at the food specific projects. So out of the 79 funded, we have 13 that are specifically food. And we can see on the next slide, yes, so I'm going to start at the 12 o'clock position. So at the Food Enterprise Zone in Leitrim, which is in Drumshanbo. And the Drumshanbo Food Hub has been in existence probably since 2007. And it has some excellent projects working out of there now. The Shed Distillery is there, Chef in a Box is there. The Cheese Hub had been located there for a while. They have a commercial kitchen, but it's fully occupied. So the project promoters in this case then applied to us again for funding to develop more space. So that space we expect will come online in Q3 2023. So some of the projects that I'll mention on this page now, on this slide, are not finished. So I'll try and give an understanding to the audience of which ones are finished and what they offer. There will be, hopefully in Q3 next year in Drumshanbo, additional spaces. They'll be of various sizes to suit projects and startups of various sizes. In the existing food hub, there is a commercial kitchen and there's a training facility. So that will be of benefit to anyone in that local area. In terms of their access, I suppose it's been so successful, the Drumshanbo Food Hub, because of its access to Dublin and to Belfast. It's actually very close and has a very good road network to both centres. So moving on then, if we look at BioConnect, which is down at the 1 o'clock, BioConnect is based just outside Monaghan town. It's very much looking at laboratories. It's a very scientific-based project, albeit looking at agri-food. Some of the partners there are very much looking at the mushroom side and what enzymes, what additional ingredients, what nutraceuticals and additional value-add ingredients can come out. But they will have space available. Again, it's not complete, finished yet, but they are looking at science-based projects that would have spin-outs in the future. And it's a really ambitious project and we're delighted to be involved with it. Moving on then down, we have Meath Enterprise and the Boyne Valley Food Innovation Centre, which just turned its sod there about 2 months ago. And again, we would hope that Boyne Valley will be finished in early 2024. It's going to have 9 food units and it will also have a kitchen timeshare. As we know in food, it can be challenging to get from your kitchen into commercial units, but sometimes you need a kitchen timeshare facility just to develop your product in a commercial kitchen. So then that's going to be based in Navan. So moving then down to Spade and the Edge, both of these are in Dublin. Spade is in the inner city and Edge is out near Tala. So Spade is again an existing project, but they're building an extension at the moment. So they have, their existing site is full because there is obviously a huge demand for food space in Ireland. And their new unit should be on stream probably by May or June next year. So they're quite well advanced. They also have kitchens, commercial kitchens that can be used. Out at the edge in Tallaght, it's really a food test kitchen that they have there, and very high quality office space. So people that are at the early stages of startup, where you're doing your desk research, you're maybe doing your market research, it's great to have access to a kitchen, but also at the same time have access to a desk where you can log in and do your research through either the Thinking House there in Bord Bia, online or whatever. So it's really, really useful to have that. Further down then we have Mountmellick Development Association in County Laois. They have commercial kitchens. They're open at the moment and they have an online booking system. So again, very useful, not so far from the centre of Dublin, to go down and spend a day developing, using the kitchens to be able to, I suppose, move it out from your own home kitchen and develop products in a proper commercial kitchen, but rented on on an hourly or daily rate, which can be all people need at the very beginning. So moving on then down to Lachine, where the bioeconomy cluster and the bioeconomy campus is based. So this is also a very ambitious project and one we're delighted to be involved with as well. Very much on the bioeconomy and the circular economy side of things, looking at waste streams, specifically in dairy, but also looking at new ingredients that we can use from those waste streams, adding value all the time. Coming on stream hopefully in 2024. And it's a really ambitious project, very science-based, but will definitely provide huge opportunities. Cork Urban then is based in North City, Cork. It's a local authority-led project. Fantastic opportunities there for people in the Cork areas, especially in the urban area of disadvantage there. But recently they took over 4 units in Ballincollig, 4 food units, and they've done them up. They're also complete. At the time that I did my last piece of research last week, they were full, but they did say that they're always moving. People are moving on when they're scaling up, etc. So it's always worth keeping an eye on projects like that. Kerry Food Hub then in the Fieries area of Kerry, 10 1,000 square foot units were developed and they were opened earlier this year. Fantastic food units built to a very, very high standard. At the moment they're full as well, but again, people are always transitioning in and out. What's also very interesting on the Kerry Food Hub is that they've developed an app where they can match producers with buyers and suppliers. So it's a really interesting app. So keep an eye on their website just to find out if that can be of use to you. It's an online platform, so obviously of use to anyone across the country. Moving up then to Clare Maritime Economic Zone, Clare Mez. It will have space in Kilrush. Again, it won't be complete until next year. Very much looking at marine related projects, so I guess seaweed and seafood. Moving up then into my own region, we have 2 food projects, Park Namara, which is out in Kilkieran, and they're going to have a seafood innovation development centre, again looking very much at our natural resources on seafood, seaweed, adding value to those and what we can do in terms of innovation. That project is currently with An Bord Pleanála, so we are hoping to have that resolved by the end of the year and hopefully start building next year on that. And as Elaine and Alan presented earlier, a very good outline of where Bia is at, 70% complete, and we're hoping to cut the ribbon very soon on that project. That'll be a good day. And I suppose one of the things that I think came very clearly across from Elaine was the whole programmatic side and how important it is. It's not just about space. So whilst I'm talking here today mainly about infrastructure space, it's very much about collaboration, working with the other partners and providing programs and supports for projects, because any startup and scaling business knows that having the building and walking in the front door is one thing, but if you're not supported and you're not looking outward and working with different programs, it can be a very lonely place. So it's very important that we continue that collaboration. Finally, then we have a project in Lanesborough in Longford, which will be complete again in the middle of next year. Premier Lakelands, looking at startup and scaling and expanding very large campus of food, all specifically food. And again, working there locally with the local authority. So that's my whistle stop tour. At the end of the day, there are other spaces. I know Elaine put up a different map. So there would be other food spaces that are run by small communities. So we have the Kishtin and Roscommon. Teagasc have some spaces as well. Ballybay and Monaghan have space. There's a Cork Incubator Kitchen that has bakery space. So I think I saw a question in the chat there about space. It is a challenge always to keep it updated because it's a movable feast, if you pardon the pun. But it is worth, on my next slide, I just give 2 contact details. Very much good to stay in touch with your local enterprise office who are on the ground, typically will know most of what's happening in the different regions. And then my own colleague, Tina Gannon, whose email is there, will coordinate any inquiries that you may have on any of the REDF or the BEDF projects that I've presented today. So Lishan Boilem Gurmaigat Arech, the board Bia, Agus Lishan Rintal, we are to Bia Agus Mara, or some Karu or Duinu, and thank you, Mark, as well.
Hello, my name is Thomas Hayes. I'm with the Kerry Local Enterprise Office, but I'm representing the 31 local enterprise offices nationally. I'd be chair of a food steering committee, and certainly food is very important to us as a local enterprise office. Today, we're going to talk about the local enterprise office and our role in food and our general supports. And these consist of core supports. We have soft supports and training supports. And I'm going to touch on a couple of initiatives that we're engaged in with our partners. I think it is very important today. The word collaboration has been emphasized on numerous occasions. And I think, you know, that is something very important in terms of the supports that are available for food producers. Because as a food producer starting, it is very difficult because food requires, I suppose, a lot more work perhaps than a lot of other businesses in terms of regulation, food safety, etc. I suppose, what are the local enterprise offices? We're a network of 31 local enterprise offices linked to the local authorities and working within the local authorities. We're funded by the Department of Enterprise, and our funding is channeled through Enterprise Ireland through a central coordination unit. So immediately we can see there that the linkages are there, and we would have a very strong referral process with Enterprise Ireland in terms of, as businesses grow, certainly they can move through the system, move through the local enterprise system and onto Enterprise Ireland and indeed Board Bia. I'm glad also that we have some great collaboration with Board Bia in terms of some of the initiatives we have developed, and I'll touch on those later. In terms of our core financial grant guidelines, again, I mentioned we work with the micro enterprise sector, and essentially these are businesses employing 10 or less people. And again, the one thing about micro businesses is they're varied, all kinds of everything, but food is one sector that we work very close with as local enterprise offices. Again, we'll say for a LEO to work with such a business, that business must be located within the local authority area. It must be obviously be in the commercial field. It must be capable of generating employment, because as an agency, that is what we are measured on. We're also looking for innovation. We're looking for manufacturing. And again, if the business can progress the trade internationally, certainly we're interested in those. Again, businesses within the Gaeltacht areas should talk to Údarás na Gaeltacht, those micro businesses in the Gaeltacht areas in the first instance. And again, we would have a good relationship with Údarás in terms of our protocol arrangements and so on. People often ask me, you know, what is eligible or what is ineligible as opposed to eligible, because again, there are a lot of grey areas in terms of business support, and I suppose businesses make very strong cases in terms of their own progression. But there are ineligible areas, and these would include primary agriculture or aquaculture, basically somebody outstanding in their own field. We've heard of some of the supports there from the Department of Agriculture today. Retail and again, food service businesses would not be eligible. But what we are interested in is where there is the added value, where there is the processing of food, where that food is taken forward in terms of local distribution and in terms of sales. In terms of our core supports, we have a number of core supports, and I'll just touch on these. Again, the first core support is what we call a feasibility support, feasibility grant. And again, this is based on 50% matching funding. And I suppose, again, anybody going out in the early stages of a business is exploring the market, exploring, I suppose, the production, exploring ingredients, shelf life, again, looking at tasting panels and so on. And this grant supports that type of initiative because you need to prove the concept. Basically, with any feasibility study, I suppose there are three outcomes, as I'd say. One is, yes, it is feasible. Secondly, no, it is not feasible. And perhaps on the third occasion, it does require some additional research. But again, some of the supports or some of the areas that are eligible under the feasibility study would include consultancy costs, again, looking at product development, innovation costs, elements of salary, labour, research, and so on. But again, people often say, do I need to complete a feasibility study before I progress to another grant? No, specifically, do you need to have a feasibility study grant to progress to another grant? You don't. Everybody, if they're working in a specific field, they have a sectoral knowledge of that field. And really, if they're looking at getting value from the feasibility study, they should be looking at covering off an area where they don't have that expertise. So example, it could be some technical research, it could be shelf life and so on. I'm sure my colleagues from Enterprise Ireland will touch on the innovation vouchers for limited companies. So again, that is a very important support mechanism. And I'll preempt the question here. People say, can sole traders apply for such funding? Yes, they can. Can limited companies apply for funding? Yes, they can. The next grant structure we would have, and again, I'm talking about the core grants, and remember the eligibility criteria I did list earlier, are the business priming grants and the business expansion grants. Essentially, the business priming grants is for businesses less than 18 months of age, business expansion grants for businesses greater than 18 months of age. And again, I described this and the supports within these grants. It's like a dinner menu to a certain extent, in that capital items, capital expenditure is eligible at a 50% level, matching fund level. Salary supports are eligible within this grant structure, again from 7,500 to 15,000 based on the salary your employee is being paid. There are elements of consultancy, innovation, marketing, and again, there's some general overhead costs such as utility. For example, it could be looking at three-phase power and so on. An interesting component of this grant as well is that the first year's rental on a premises is eligible, providing a contract is in place and the first month's rent has been paid. And this is very interesting. Again, going back to that collaboration question, we'll say engaging with the hubs where a small food producer might be moving into a hub. And again, perhaps there's an opportunity just to link back in with the LEO supports on this. We have another support again. Claudia touched earlier in terms of the overseas supports and attendance at trade fairs. Again, this is known as a technical assistance for micro exporters. Basically, it's an export grant where there is a grant of up to €2,500 available, again, for trade exhibition costs and economy flights. But there has to be an international significance to the trade fair itself, or certainly it could be an Irish fair where there are overseas buyers attending. But again, it is a useful support mechanism. Again, over the last 2 or 3 years during COVID, obviously it quietened down, but certainly we are seeing some traction on this again, and that is very encouraging. But again, you know, it's important that we do collaborate with Board B in terms of their overseas work. And again, even on the Board B website itself, there's a full listing of overseas trade fairs that might be of value. It's very important to travel. I think it's an education itself, just seeing what is happening out there in terms of food trends and what is happening elsewhere in the external market. Absolutely essential. The Trading Online Voucher Scheme. Now, I've touched on some of our core schemes, but the Trading Online Voucher Scheme is a scheme which was introduced 6-7 years ago. And again, the voucher, it's a financial incentive to assist small businesses develop or enhance their ability to trade online. Now, this has been really interesting, particularly during COVID. I don't like to use the word pivot, but certainly many businesses had to pivot and they had to change the way they were doing business. And in fact, it would have been their online trading capacity, their e-commerce capacity that would have kept some of these doors open. And food would certainly be one of those. It's an interesting support. Again, on just talking from the Kerry perspective, or from any local enterprise office, we'd have dealt with maybe 50, 60 of these grant applications a year. During COVID, they ballooned up to €400 or €500 or 400 or 500 applications per Leo, which again, it just showed, you know, the thinking that was going on out there in terms of businesses trying to attain online sales and develop their e-commerce capability. As I say, it's a useful incentive, and again, it's open to many businesses, not only food, but others as well. We work closely with Microfinance Ireland in terms of loans, and again, what we found, I suppose, particularly after the downturn, many businesses had difficulties, or even during COVID, had difficulty in securing the finance from the mainstream banks. And I suppose Microfinance Ireland, it's basically a scheme that works with businesses where there might have been an issue in terms of credit history or whatever. And I suppose these applications are assessed on where the business is moving forward. And again, there are loans there up to €25,000. The application process is that the applicant will engage with microfinance, initially Microfinance Ireland, download the application form. But the local enterprise offices do provide support. I suppose we're well used to pushing these applications forward. We do have that in-house expertise in terms of dealing with the application process and the documentation that is provided. And I might add, like, this isn't a free loan, it is a loan. You have to prove that your business is viable, and any good lending takes place at the time of loan assessment and submission of that documentation. So again, I'd encourage, I suppose, businesses to engage on this, and again, it's another useful mechanism. And businesses often ask the question, can the microfinance loan be used as matching funding? Yes, it can, and like that is not an issue. In recent times also, we've had a lot of engagement with the credit union movement. And again, they're anxious to engage with the business sector in terms of loans. For example, in the agricultural sector and some parts of the country, again, because the credit unions follow one another, there's a loan scheme known as Cultivate, which might be of interest to some of the people attending here today. I suppose people often touch base with us initially. Again, it's looking for various financial resources, or looking for direction in terms of other financial resources where we can't meet that need ourselves. What I do feel, and it's been touched on earlier, you know, the whole area of capacity building is absolutely critical. And again, from a local enterprise office perspective, we deal with businesses pre-enterprise, early stage business, and again, as the businesses progress, you know, through sectoral supports and so on. So again, there's a very broad range of supports available, as I say, from business startup right through to customs workshop. Brexit has obviously been a huge challenge, and we provide some supports around that, and again, in cooperation with our partners in Enterprise Ireland. And of course, looking at the whole area of digital marketing, Facebook, Instagram, search engine optimization, a lot of work and huge interest in those programs at the moment. But I'd like just to emphasize 3 programs again here today: Lean, Green, and there's a Digital Start program. Again, businesses have come through COVID, they're probably a lot more efficient, but the Lean programs are out there in terms of ongoing efficiency within the business, in terms of cutting down waste, maximizing the resource within the business. It can be the layout of a factory, layout of a production line, and so on. And there are supports around that in terms of consultancy. Green speaks for itself. We're moving into the whole sustainability green agenda, like as a food business, everything from, you know, sourcing product, carbon footprint, packaging, and so on, absolutely key and important. Energy is a huge issue at the moment, and obviously in terms of, you know, refrigeration and so on, this does present a huge cost to existing businesses. So like, I'd encourage people to get out there, you know, why not engage with your local enterprise office or with Enterprise Ireland, and perhaps look at some of the programs like the Green for Micro, Green for Start, where a consultant can come in, do an assessment of your business, give you a report, and give you something to take forward in terms of securing finance to address that those energy wastage issues. Digital Start, I spoke earlier about the trading online voucher scheme, but Digital Start is a program that looks at the internal digitalization process within the business. It is making those elements of the business talk to one another using various software platforms and so on. But again, it's key in terms of attaining efficiencies. And certainly we're open to engaging with any business, and particularly with the food businesses, on these programs. I'll just touch on a few kind of generic programs we've been working on over the last couple of years. And again, one of those would be a concept developed by our colleagues in Dublin, which we are pushing out nationwide. It's the Digital School of Food. And basically it is available on the local enterprise.ie website. Again, where as an early stage food producer can engage. This program is set out on a modular basis, a blended learn basis, incorporating videos and so on. And again, for an early stage producer or somebody contemplating starting out on a food journey, this is a program with some fantastic resources developed. And, you know, again, we're currently in the process of just upgrading content and taking that forward, but it is a useful resource, and certainly I'd encourage early stage producers or those who are actually producing, you know, just to reach in and grab that information as it is there. The second program we have at the moment, and again, I'd like to thank our colleagues in Board Bia for the work on this, and it's been mentioned earlier there by Claudia, is the Food Starter program. And again, the Food Starter program is a short 2-day program, or it can be a half-day program as well, for those with a food ID and those at early stage of starting up a food business and developing it. Again, the program is not suitable for those planning to open a cafe or retail outlet, but it does look at food producers. And again, the content is there, you know, just in terms of costing, managing finance, state agency supports, you know, looking at positioning, understanding branding, and so on. It is a precursor to the Food Academy program. Again, it's a program we run with Board Bia and with SuperValue. So it's important that people would complete a Food Starter program before going on and looking at the Food Academy program. Now, we're presently rolling out the Food Starter programs nationally. As LEOs, we work on a regional basis also, and if one LEO cannot fill a program, certainly we'll be reaching out to our colleagues within the region to gain some candidates. Again, it's a low-cost program, and I'd encourage people to engage with it if you're starting on your food journey and moving into the retail market. The Food Academy program, again, this year we celebrate the 10th year of the Food Academy. In fact, we had a meeting there during the week just to decide how we would actually celebrate it. And again, it's looking at the case studies, it's looking at the businesses that have progressed through the Food Academy. And there are now over 300 Food Academy small producers and SuperValue stores. And, you know, we're expecting those businesses to grow and move on to the mainstream aisles as programs develop. And I suppose the aim of the Food Academy program is to provide small producer businesses with a solid foundation to progress and confidently enter the retail market. And crucial to this is the fact that SuperValue have engaged, along with Board Bia and the local enterprise offices, in giving participants an opportunity for a 12-week period to put their product into the supermarket under the Food Academy brand and test the market as it should be tested. And again, you know, there's a lot of expertise being brought to the table by the partners here, and certainly from the SuperValue perspective, they're not going to put a product into a supermarket unless it does sell and they see some opportunity in it going forward. So it's a great opportunity for those businesses that are progressing through the retail process. I suppose in terms of the local enterprise offices, I suppose just to finish up, I think, you know, it's commented earlier that the local enterprise offices have a good, strong local knowledge, and certainly we do. We're very much engaged in our communities. We're certainly engaged in the local economic environment. We link very closely with our local food hubs, with our food networks, with our local development companies, again, because there have been extensive schemes pushed out to the local development companies in recent times. And again, there are other schemes there that sometimes it's only when one asks the question. For example, there's a Fisheries Local Area Group scheme, again, which is targeting the marine areas 10 kilometres from the coastline, and certainly looking at marine food production and processing. That's a very important area as well, right around our coastline. In terms of local enterprise offices, again, I just refer people in terms of the local contacts to have a look at the local enterprise.ie website. Within that, you will find the contact lists for all the local enterprise offices nationally. And I suppose just to conclude, I'd just like to thank the organisers for the opportunity to address you today. Again, just to emphasise the collaborative nature of our work right across the agencies, with Board Bia, with Enterprise Ireland, with the Department of Agriculture. And it's so important that we do work together at a local level. Thank you.
Thanks very much. In terms of introduction, my name is Niall Coulson. I lead Enterprise Ireland's Food HPSU, High Potential Startups. I should say, as a precursor, Enterprise Ireland loves their acronyms. So HPSU, High Potential Startups, I'll use that interchangeably throughout the presentation. I want to thank Board Bia for hosting us today and for the department for having what has been a hugely informative session to date. And I hope to maintain that standard as we come to a close. The presentation will be divided into 3 parts. Firstly, I'll look at how we define HPSUs, secondly, how we onboard them, and then thirdly, the financial supports that we offer our HPSU community. And in doing so, maybe a good place to start is look at the mission statement from Enterprise Ireland. Our mission statement is to accelerate the development of world-class Irish companies to achieve leading positions in global markets. And just draw your attention to that, global markets. We are mandated by our department to engage with companies who want to internationalize, to look at opportunities in international markets and in global regions. So that very much shapes the supports that we offer our companies and the point at which we engage with them. So firstly, on the definition of HPS, of high potential startups, our supports are very much governed by the EU, and consequently our definition of startups is also shaped very much by EU state aid rules. So to be a startup, you have to be a company that's less than 5 years old from the date of incorporation. You would also, and just an addendum to that, a company that is also autonomous and independent. So cannot be part of a larger group structure. It has to be independent, and it also can't be a linked business. And by linked enterprises, we refer to companies that there may be a 25% stakehold in that business from another enterprise. So they have to be startups in the truest sense, independent, autonomous, and less than 5 years. They have to be involved in manufacturing or international traded services. What we've seen with some level of frequency in the food sector is that we've witnessed outsourced manufacturing models, companies approaching us with outsourced manufacturing models. They are eligible. However, the NPD, the R&D, the technical know-how has to be retained in the company of which we're supporting. That has to be very much embedded in the business to which we're supporting and the C-level positions in the companies that we're supporting. They have to be headquartered and controlled in Ireland. They have to have the potential to create 10 jobs and 1 million in sales within 3 years. So that's from the point of onboarding within Enterprise Ireland. They have to provide us with a business plan, a robust business plan, which indicate how are they going to grow to those levels within a 3-year window. And that spread in terms of revenue will be both domestic and also ideally within the international markets. They have to be introduce a new innovative product or service to international markets. That is also very much linked to the internationalization. Me Too products have a low probability of succeeding in international markets. So to differentiate companies and to succeed internationally, they would have to have some level of innovation. And that innovation can indeed be in the product, it can be in the process, it can be in the packaging, but there has to be a level of innovation engaged in that in the business. In terms of the sources of where we onboard, and this is by no means an exhaustive list. We've heard from a number of agencies throughout the morning of collaboration between Enterprise Ireland and between other agencies as well. So there can be a real strong throughput from all the agencies that are in the room. But typically what we see is companies would work through the LEOs, sort of local enterprise office, as Tomas has outlined. Their growth trajectory is such that they've availed of fantastic supports within the local enterprise office. Their growth numbers in terms of employment and revenue is such that they'll be transferred from the LEO into Enterprise Ireland. Third level spinouts. So we have a commercialization unit within Enterprise Ireland, heavily engaged within the academia, with the universities, with tech centres and the gateways. And their role is to develop collaboratively with those universities some technology within whether the food space. It's a multi-sectoral role, but there's a food discipline in there to develop that technology and spin that out into a startup. And at that point, we could engage with that business. And then finally, the investment ready propositions. So these are typically entrepreneurs who have had a successful exit, have grown a food company, have exited the market and are re-entering. So those serial entrepreneurs who are coming back to the market with a level of capital and domain knowledge, and they may actually come directly into ourselves, mainly because they've had a previous relationship with EI. In terms of support, we can divide them into non-financial and financial, and I further divide that financial into grants, and we've heard from Tomas in relation to the grants from the LEOs. and also equity as well. So equity being investment that we place into a company that would be redeemable in time, or alternatively converting into a shareholding in the business. So it's non-financial and financial support. And to step them through in a little bit more detail, and once again, this isn't an exhaustive list, but the 9 financial supports. Firstly, we have advice on the startup ecosystem. Enterprise Ireland will celebrate their 25th anniversary next year. So there's huge corporate knowledge accrued within the organization on how to scale businesses. And that corporate knowledge stretches from commercial, strategic, also into the technical sphere as well. So really deep knowledge within the walls of Enterprise Ireland offices that can be accessed once you're a HPSU client. We have a market very similar to Bord Bia. We have a market research centre. We have a world-class market research centre in our HQ in East Point. And that's manned and supported by professional researchers to help companies research their market, research their product, and the opportunities attaching to the same. We have a mentoring. We have, and these are sectoral lines as well. So we have mentors who are in the food space and food tech space who can engage with the companies and work with them collaboratively in terms of developing their offering. We have management development training programs, again, working on business plan development or on scaling the business across all the different business functions. We have a management development program that is available. The sprint program is worth mentioning. It's a 3-day intensive program for companies to get them investment ready, looking at the modules about best positioning the company to scale. And then finally, Founders Forum. And this is a platform for peer-to-peer engagement from founders, and that is also multi-sectoral, so companies can engage not only within the food sphere, but also in the digitech and the engineering sphere and across the whole ecosystem from founders and benefit from shared learnings. In relation to financial support, and Tomas very much stole my thunder on a lot of these because they are very comparable with the LEOs. So we have the feasibility grant. Tomas did a great job in stepping out what's available there. It's a co-funding grant, so Enterprise Ireland will provide a percentage of support towards the cost. So the feasibility grant has stepped out. It's to allow us early stage company to investigate the viability of a product or a market, and it's to encourage them to do that level of research prior to investing heavily in it. We have strategic consultancy grants. We would often see companies when they approach Enterprise Ireland, they could be single promoter or 2 or 3 level team. Ideally, clearly not all the skills are embedded within that team. So a strategic consultancy grant allows that team to engage with specialist skills to bring in, whether that be on a consultancy basis within the short term. And we could support those costs up to around 50% of bringing in those specialist skills into the company at a very early stage. Key manager grant, very similar to expanding out a balanced management team. That could be a part-time key manager who comes in on a financial capacity or HR capacity or a strategic capacity to come into the team at early stage. And again, that would be supported through Enterprise Ireland. And then we have our green support and our lean supports. And Tomas very much dwelled on both of those, the importance of green and sustainability for companies, even at an early stage, and also lean productivity improvements, productivity efficiency for companies to ensure that they're maximizing their margins. So we have support around the financial grants, very much focused on building the company, supporting the company, and making them as robust as possible. In relation to our equity offering, we have previously we had a CSF, competitive star fund. Some of you may have heard of our CSF. That's been recently replaced. That was a 50k support equity investment in companies. That's been replaced as of this month. The first call is this month, later on 20th October, I think is the deadline. And that's the pre-seed start fund. And that's for companies who are post MVP, so post having a minimal viable product, but pre-seed. So they still need some level of development to be undertaken prior to engaging in a seed round. And this is a 100k, which would be over 2 tranches, 50k and 50k, very specifically linked to milestones for achievement for releasing the second 50k. And that will be in totality to 100k against 10k of matching funding. So the bias is very much in favor of Enterprise Ireland support. And this is a new offering that's been launched this month. Post that, we also have our innovative high potential startup fund. This falls under innovative age for companies, as outlined, that are less than 5 years old. That would have a range of up to innovative age 1.2 million for innovative companies over a life cycle of their 5 years. And the level of investment in terms of quantum investment into the company will be very much determined by the growth development of that company. So a company that has higher probability of success and presents a business plan that's going to return stronger employment and export and revenue for the state would likely get a larger package. Very much a co-funded support. So we would look for a minimum of a 1-to-1 matching. If we're putting equity in the business, we're looking for at least a minimum of 1-to-1 to be coming in from a third party to co-fund. And if we look from our annual report, this is just an extract from our annual report, just to give you a sense of the size of those equity packages. We invested over 82 HPSUs, 18 million. So that works out about 220,000 per HPSU. So that would be the average investment size to our innovative HPSU. And once again, that's a co-funding approach. So we'd be looking for at least a minimum of 1-to-1. Just to give you a flavour of the companies that we would support through our food HPSU team, we have Blanconino on the left, White Hag, Feed, Seeding Solutions, Tanks, Plants, and Planted. What's notable about these is the geographical diversity across the companies. Blanconino make tortillas in Clonmel, White Hag are in Sligo, Planted up in Donegal, Seeding Solutions are in Louth. So we great diversity in geographical within these companies, and also there's a disproportionately high level of female promoters. The latter three, Seeding Solutions, Tanks, Plants, and Planted, are all female-led enterprises. What we've noticed in terms of critical factors of success for companies, we could distill these down into 4. So these are what we nominate as what makes a company scale from our viewpoint, but within the food sector. We could distill these down into 4 key factors. One being domain expertise, so having deep food domain expertise when starting a startup, having access to capital. It's a capital intensive to build a startup, and it's particularly to internationalize it. So having that access to capital will be key. There will be a global opportunity for the product. And then that the product is innovative, that it can be differentiated in market, and it will be key. Ideally, the ones that will really scale are the ones that operate within the intersection. So if you intersect with all 4, it's fantastic. Or 3 of the 4, these are the ones that truly have a strong chances of scaling. Claudia mentioned the FoodWorks program earlier on, and just to touch on it again, that's a tripartite accelerator program that harnesses the expertise of the 3 agencies, Teagasc, Board Bia, and Enterprise Ireland, to deliver a 10-month program for food companies. That's open for applications currently. That closes in early December for applicants to participate on it. It's the only food accelerator program in Ireland currently. And there's also a feasibility grant embedded within that, a 35k feasibility grant for the companies. I would also recommend anybody who's considering starting a business to visit the Start in Ireland website. There's a self-declaration wizard as part of that website where you can complete 4 questions and then very much give you a tailored direction of where you should be going to at your stage of business. And those questions relate to your sectoral expertise, your sectoral focus, your stage of development, what you're actually looking for. And then you get a customized return on these are the agencies that you should be engaging with based on your sectoral focus and your stage of development. And then finally, just on contact details, I'd be very open to having a conversation with any company who's willing to engage with Enterprise Ireland. That's the email address, hpsu-inquiries@enterprise-ireland.com. Also, you can contact, as Tomas outlined, the Leos directly on localenterprises.ie. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. So in closing today's seminar, I want to reiterate our thanks and appreciation to all of the speakers who've taken the time to be here today, in person or online. I hope you will agree with me that they have demonstrated a real commitment by each organisation to supporting small and local food producers. I think this seminar has been very useful in demonstrating the collaborative effort across the department and agencies involved, and I suppose pointing a way towards the future. We have received some technical questions which we'll follow up on directly, and we will make the presentations and speaker contact details available on the department website and send you that link. I think that several people mentioned today the importance of meeting food safety standards, and I know that can seem like a heavy burden for a small food producer. However, we know that having the highest food safety standards is essential for any business and essential to protect the health of our consumers. The Food Safety Authority of Ireland, FSAI, has very useful material on its website, and we'll circulate that link also. As to next steps, we will examine the findings of the research report and we'll have further engagement across the state agencies and with stakeholders on how we follow up on those recommendations. I want to close by again thanking Board Bia for their kindness in hosting today's event in person and online. I want to particularly thank my colleagues Ray Sheehy and Angela Robinson in the department's food division who put tremendous effort into organising this event. Thank you.